Hey, do you ever take your hat off in workshops?
Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, October the 6th, 2021. Notice is hereby given that a workshop meeting of the Commissioners Court of Grimes County, Texas will be held this date at this time. We are at the Grimes County Annex Building, 114 West Buffington Avenue, Anderson, Texas, in which the following subjects will be discussed. Agenda item number 1, this meeting has been called to order. It is 1 p.m. Agenda item number 2, we're going to discuss and review options for ARPA fund utilization. Just to set the parameters for those that are present, this is a workshop which allows us to have a little bit more flexibility in open discussion, but to make sure that this is done orderly. If you have a comment that you'd like to make or have discussion, ideas that you'd like to share, please raise your hand. I'd like to recognize you, have you come to the podium. We are broadcasting this live on Facebook. No, we're not.
This one's recorded. It'll be posted.
This one is recorded and will be placed later on Facebook. And so, again, any ideas at this point are are good ideas. I should say all ideas at this point are just ideas, okay? And it's the goal of Commissioners Court to take input from department heads and elected officials and any citizens that might be here, the commissioners themselves, and then once we have a gathering of those ideas and suggestions and thoughts, then we'll need to go back to work and do some prioritizing and just see how far those monies will be, how far they'll go with all of the ideas submitted. Ma'am, I do not know who you are.
Caitlin Verrett. I'm with GrantWorks. I
Okay.
met with you, I believe.
Yeah, oh, you were on the
video call.
Zoom, but you were just on phone.
Yes.
We couldn't see, okay. Well, I'm County Judge Joe Fouth. You have Commissioner Philip Cox down there. Commissioner Walker is coming in. This is Commissioner David Dobianski, and that's Commissioner Chad Mallett. Do you have an opening comments that you're going to make?
I was going to actually do an ARP 101 for everybody in the room, but if you do not wish for me to do that, that is perfectly okay.
I'll let you do that, but I'm going to ask you to do that second because both of our IT personnel are tied up in this workshop. So I'd like to call on Greg Cannon, who's our IT director, and let him at least share his ideas so that he's free to either take a nap or respond to IT issues that may come up because we have his technical person locked up doing the recording. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
I mean, you can leave your stuff right there. That's fine.
Okay.
Greg Cannon, if you will, please, sir.
Thank you. My name is Greg Cannon, the Director of IT for Grimes County. We have 2 separate requests as part of this America Rescue Plan Act. Would you like me to go into any detail of what our requests are?
I'd like, that's up to all of us, but my initial thought is give us kind of a broad picture and then what it's going to do for us and how it fits into the ARPA requirements, if you will.
Okay, at a 10,000-foot level, I'll just kind of briefly go over my 2 requests. If you have any questions, just feel free to stop me and ask me. The first request is to provide fiber internet connectivity to several of the offices within the Anderson city limit area. One being the courthouse, the second one being the current annex building that we're in that will be potentially remodeled, and then also taking fiber to the county appraisal district, the Anderson City Hall, and the VFD. And we have the benefits of taking it to offices that are not typically part of the county, such as Anderson City Hall and the VFD that's close to the sheriff's office, is that we do a lot of meetings, we hold court, all those kind of things in the Anderson City Hall, so that's to our benefit. We use that facility. We feel they should be on our network for security reasons. If we take any of our equipment and put it in the Anderson City Hall, we're at the mercy of the security that's on that network there, plus the speeds. Depending on how many people are in the Anderson City Hall at any given time for a court or any type of budget meetings or anything, the internet connection could be overloaded, but if we have fiber connection there, we have plenty of bandwidth. Another reason we were wanting to extend it to the VFD is it's right along the same path. It would just be a drop-off connection. But in the case, if there's ever a natural disaster or hurricane or something like that, and they need to stage a facility as a emergency, well, I don't know what you'd even call it.
Command center.
Yeah, some type of command center at the VFD, they would have internet connectivity, and they might need those services for communication in a 911 situation, so it could be utilized for that. We also provide some budgetary funds to the Grimes County Appraisal District, and by us extending fiber to that location, they could potentially reduce their cost for internet and phone services by about $30,000 a year. I don't know what portion of that the county pays, but that could help alleviate some of the funds to the taxpayers by covering their internet and phone charges. We've had great success by introducing fiber to other parts of the county, such as the JP3's commissioner's offices over in Navasota. We used to have constant problems with wires that weren't buried. Now we've instigated fiber, and anyone can check our uptime connectivity for any of those locations from our Grimes County website. But we have pretty much 100% availability now at those sites, where before they went down constantly. It takes away from our time, it takes away from productivity of those offices. Citizens not being able to reach those offices or get any information from those offices because they're down. So taking fiber to the courthouse will help if we ever have to use that courthouse for court. It will bring a reliable connection to that building, as well as to if this building ever gets redone. Does anybody have any questions about that before I move on to the fairgrounds?
Well, just one area in precinct 3 that is also covered is the AgriLife, and they do a lot of kids' education in AgriLife, and they've benefited, I believe, also from the fiber connection, but that just reinforces
Yeah.
the value of getting that enhancement.
Stacy and the commissioners can tell you, we used to have all kinds of problems with the internet.
It would go down like every 2 weeks for a couple days, and it was just,
And there
if
was
the
a,
wind blew, it would go out.
yeah, if it sprinkled, it would go out. So the benefits of fiber are tremendous, because the cable's buried, it's all fiber connections, so the connectivity is much more reliable and secure, so.
You had a second area?
Second area we're requesting funds for is for the fairgrounds, the Grimes County Fairgrounds. We're looking to extend wireless to those facilities out there. They currently have fiber connectivity through Mid-South, but we're looking to extend wireless to the main exhibit halls, and there's a couple of benefits there. We have the ability, or would have the ability, to charge paying customers that rent the facilities. We could charge them for internet services. So if there's an expo out there and they have multiple booths, we could charge each of the vendors a certain fee to recoup some of our internet costs, or just help drive revenue from those facilities. So extending wireless to the main exhibit hall is another reason.
Perhaps this would be a selling point, because during COVID, we did a lot of testing out there. So the people that came in to do the COVID testing, and they had to connect.
Yeah.
So we did testing, and we also did, what else out there? You could actually get shots out there. So they have connectivity. They may have mobile, but this might be an enhancement to that request, because we did see that during the COVID.
There was some thought also, if there was an incident where people who needed internet activity, such as schools in rural areas, that the citizens could maybe come to the parking lot. We could provide a free Wi-Fi password for limited connectivity, and they could do homework or do whatever they need to. it'd be a service of the county returning back to the citizens. So,
Greg, on either one of these, do you have even a idea of cost?
the first one, the fiber to connect the courthouse, this annex, the Grimes County Appraisal District, the City Hall, and the VFD.
Yes.
All in's about 165,000. And most of that cost is because of the trenching that we have to do under concrete driveways, et cetera. And I'm just ballparking what we would do at the Grimes County Fairgrounds. I'm guessing that's probably gonna be around 40,000, but it could be
Where are you
less.
coming from to hook up to them?
We would need to trench from the Go Texans building, over to the Expo, the big building.
Oh, because we already have it in the Go Texan?
We have, Mid-South Fiber there, yes.
So going from the Go Texan to the Expo is 40 grand?
Well, no, then we've got to put wireless antennas and the software that allows us to charge users when they have expos or whatever at the fairgrounds, allows us to charge for that,
Is
so,
that included in the 165?
no, that's separate.
Yeah, you are. Good try. Don't ask me no good. Any commissioners, anything else from Mr. Cannon at this time? And this is not to say you can't come back to the well at a future date, but this is our initial workshop to get as many ideas out there as we can.
Okay.
And appreciate your effort and your energy. Okay.
Uh-huh.
He has one more.
He who?
Dark Trace.
Oh, yes,
What's
sorry,
the other one?
Dark Trace. Yes, that's the one that was, I had requested in my budget this year. It's a cybersecurity software package that helps protect the county from a behavioral standpoint. What that means is we have software now that protects us against viruses. It's CrowdStrike. Dark Trace protects us from external entities that are trying to breach our networks, either primarily through email, but through just brute force attack. It notifies us when those kind of attacks are happening, where CrowdStrike is more antivirus. If you've got a file on your computer that has a virus, it stops that kind of stuff. There's basically two sides of cyber protection, the behavioral side and then the file malware side. And so this, my request was, we took it out of this year's budget in the hopes that we could possibly get it in next year's budget. But when the ARP came up, we requested.
You shared with me once upon a time how you thought this might fit under the ARPA money. Can you share that reasoning? Because I know we had a good story worked up back then. I don't remember it right now.
Was cybersecurity part of the package?
Cybersecurity overall is allowable through the revenue loss category. I believe if we are going through with cybersecurity to protect the new justice system building and some of the other broadband infrastructure that we're putting
Yes.
in, it would come underneath the broadband category.
Okay, good. There's your answer, Greg.
Okay.
This would be a perpetual expense though,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And so once ARPA funding does run out, and how much is that perpetual expense?
Well, right now it's negotiated at, I believe, $38,000 a year from, they originally quoted $72,000. We were able to negotiate down to $38,000. So I don't know what the long-term reoccurring cost will be, but the hope is to try to negotiate that every year so that it doesn't
And
jump back up.
4 years from now, the way things continue to change, Dark Trace might be outdated and there might be something else out there. So it could be a perpetual expense, Jesse, but it might be something that goes by the wayside
Yeah.
because of other
could.
Right, I just want to make
protections.
sure we're looking at all
I'm
that.
with you. I'm with you. Thank you, Greg.
And those other expenses are just one-time expenses, the other two.
Greg, do we want to include our contract with Granicus, or are we going to address that separately?
That's under your.
Yeah, that's
under
under
your
your
department.
Thank you.
And I think one of the other things you talked about, Greg, was one of the things you mentioned, that if we had to open it up to school-age children, that the Dark Trace would protect the system, the
Right.
users,
Yes.
from that.
Yeah, it would protect our
Access
network
on it,
as well
yes.
as them, yes.
And that was part of the conclusion we came to when we thought we put it on the ARPA list.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Uh-huh.
Caitlin, I just have a courtesy to our district judge. Judge, I know you're on a timetable and you like to share your ideas. Do you have time to hear GrantWorks overview on the ARPA, or do you need to shoot and run?
Well, I need to be back, I got a hearing at 3 in Waller County.
I can give him the PowerPoint later and he can review it, because all the information's in that PowerPoint, if
Okay.
that's okay with you.
Okay. Yeah, I did bring a letter for you and the commissioners, and just want me to drop it off, so you all want me to talk a little bit about it, or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Please.
All right, good deal.
And I think I shared before you got here, we're taking ideas. Any idea right now is an idea to be considered. And we're not approving anything, but we want to get all the ideas so we can then put a priority list together.
Okay, now this is what I submitted, bring everybody up to speed. You know, my bench covers both Waller and Grimes County, and there's an interlocal agreement that we work together. It's kind of
For
what
those that might not know, this is District Judge Garrett Cheney. He operates the 506th District Court, as he just said, in both Waller and Grimes, so.
And this has been approved by Waller County, so, you know, obviously we're hoping it gets approved here. What's happened in my world, and, you know, I guess it's not a secret to anybody if y'all been watching the news, but my caseload is probably, and Diana can probably verify this, has doubled, if maybe not tripled, between Waller and Grimes County. I'm pushing in felony cases in both counties around maybe 1,800, pushing like 2,000 felony active cases. It was never nowhere near that before COVID hit. What happened, Supreme Court literally shut courts down. And for people that don't understand how the court system works, especially on the criminal side, is you have your right to your day in court. And that doesn't mean by Zoom. They won't let you do a criminal trial by Zoom unless everybody signs off on that. And defense attorneys are never going to sign off on that because police officers or witnesses, they pass away, they retire, they move. And, you know, when witnesses are gone, then cases get dismissed, and that's kind of the process. So as far as moving cases, it wasn't until just recently, we're on our 43rd order from the Supreme Court on how we can handle cases. Every district, they pretty much put it on the local district judge on how to handle it. I'm pretty aggressive in that regard. I just don't want to get behind where we're going to be looking at 5 years to get this docket cleaned up, and that's just criminal. On my civil side, it's getting pretty substantial as well. It's close to 1,000. So, you know, I've pretty much followed the orders. Every time they said don't do anything, you have to socially distance or whatever, we've complied. Both me and David Moorman, who's the other district judge of Grimes County, we've gotten together. We've always tried to make it sure that we've done exactly what Supreme Court's allowed us to do. But it's just recently when we've opened up, and because of that, and I'm hoping we don't get another setback, but because of that, the caseload has just gotten to the point where my staff just can't handle the load. And Judge McKeag has always been very conservative, like I've always thought. I've always tried to keep costs down. Even though this bench probably should have had, you know, additional staff in the past, it just, you know, McKeag would do a lot of the work. And I've done a lot of the work when I came on, but it's getting to the point where I'm down there 7, 8 o'clock at night trying to get stuff done that really a staff member should be doing. And the biggest issue that's hit us is I'm a big believer in drug patches, GPS monitors on sex offenders, putting interlock devices on alcohol cases, and those have to be monitored. And there's two options, because it's just getting overwhelming. Since no cases are moving and I'm getting all these cases that are increasing, I went from a stack this big to now my stack is like this out of both counties, and we're trying to get them done. And the good news is now, since courts have opened up and I have defense attorneys with defendants and prosecutors in court, we're getting more and more cases settled, we're getting cases tried. But the problem is that load is just too much for me to even help my staff get done. So because of that, I went to Waller County, and this was purely created by COVID. Okay, that's what created this. The other thing is I went trying to get creative in my own, I guess on my own. I went to Judge McKeag. He's a senior judge So he can be appointed statewide to help out different courts that need a visiting judge. And so he's said he felt sorry for me coming in right behind him with COVID. He says, you know, I will give you first shot. If you need a trial setting or if you need me to come in, you know, to help, I'll do that. And I said, great. So what we'll do is I can be trying a case here while he's trying a case in Waller County or vice versa. Works out good. State pays for his salary. That's great. Problem is, you know, now you got 2 judges on 1 coordinator, and that's putting even more of a load on my staff. So that's the other reason why we need the additional staff. But the other thing that we will be needing is, and plus, we've created more work for my court reporter. So I'm asking for a little bit of additional money to get her compensated for this year that was substantially more. And then also an additional court reporter is needed. I'm asking for additional money for this new court reporter. So, because when I have the court reporter here trying cases, Judge McHegg or whatever senior judge we have at the other court will have a court reporter there. If we do that, then we can maybe get this caseload that we're looking like maybe 2 to 3 years down the line, maybe we can knock it back down to 1 to 2 years. The reason it's really important is, a lot of people don't realize this as well, the Constitution hasn't changed. You have a right to a speedy trial. If certain things don't happen, then I'm mandated to do certain things. I'm having a hearing this afternoon on a case where I had my grand jury let me down in Waller County. I'm calling another one on the 14th, but I could never get all the people in there. And because of that, if you don't have an indictment on file for a 90-day period, then I'm mandated to, unless there's another charge pending in another court, issue a PR bond or a bond that a person can afford. And that just scares the bejeebies out of me because, you know, I got some serious cases. I don't deal with traffic tickets. I deal with murderers, sex offenders, sexual assault type cases. So when I don't have grand juries doing their job, it puts a bad situation on me. Plus, the district attorneys are bringing on, I don't know about here, but in Waller County, we've been so overloaded, they're bringing on another additional district attorney to try to help with the load as well. But if I'm not prosecuting these cases, then bonding issues change, monitoring issues change, and we're putting the community at risk, in my opinion. So I'm here purely just to try to get rid of this backload, and that's why I'm here, and that's what I'm requesting. I'm requesting 3 things: assistance. Now, again, the numbers here, y'all would only be paying 38%. That's the percentage of what Grimes County would pay on these numbers. So I'm asking for the full-time assistant coordinator. Again, we get things under control, might not need her in the future, okay? If we might be back down here, I don't know how long the ARP money will be here, but, if things do change or if growth keeps coming, because I know we have the highway coming in here and Katie's growing in Waller County, so there's something that might evolve into a permanent position later on, but as of now, I really just need it to help me get over the COVID issue, okay? The additional money for the court reporter that I have, the extra time she's put in this year has just been astronomical. I mean, what people don't realize is she has to put in time on appellate work. Okay, so we have a trial, but now she'll be down there sometime Saturday and evenings and stuff doing appellate briefs because things that get appealed. Haven't had too many criminal stuff, but I had a lot of civil stuff because those guys are willing to do stuff by Zoom. So that's been a problem there, and I'd like to get that rectified. And then the other thing is I need the additional money for when I'm here with my court reporter or Miss Wiley or vice versa. I have another court reporter that we can just be going in both counties to knock this docket size down. So that's why I'm here.
On your item number 2, that's the $5,000 lump sum.
Just for this year. Yeah, that would just be.
Is it just for 21 or is it for 22?
For 21.
So it's the 5,000 for work she's already done.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But you're not asking for increase for 2022 for work that will be done?
No, not for her.
And all of the numbers we're looking at, are you saying this is 38%?
Yeah, it would be, of the full-time assistant, it would be 38% of that number,
Okay.
of the reporter, 38% of that number, and the additional court reporter, 38% of that number. It's roughly that.
Now, would this serve both district courts or just you?
This is just me. Now, Judge Mormon's had a little bit of advantage over me for a while. He does have 3 counties, but he has 2 coordinators and an assistant, is that right? Yeah, so he already kind of has a full team. Judge McKeag has just always kind of done a lot of the work, and I don't mind work. My favorite saying is, don't worry about the mule, throw it on the wagon. But when the wagon won't move when the mule's trying to pull, because I'm literally, I'm putting in, I'm down there going over reports, which, not trying to be ugly, but that's not really what a judge should be doing. I should be, in my mind, entertaining motions for summary judgments, having the hearings, looking at the case law, reading the briefs, not just looking to see if a guy tested positive for cocaine and I need to have a status hearing set. That's really a staff person's job. And it's just got so overwhelming that Sheila can't do it. She was trying to take a lot of work home, and finally I just said, look, I don't want to cause you to get a divorce here, or your husband come down and beat me up for you working 24/7. I have really good staff.
If you were a divorce lawyer, you could have got her a good deal.
But they won't let me do that anymore once I swore in for the judge. But yeah.
And you say Judge Duhan's court's already approved this?
Yes.
For their portion?
The committee's approved it. It's going to, in front of they have an advisory committee, which is what this is, like a workshop.
Okay.
They're going to recommend to the commissioner's court, but unfortunately, Judge Duhan's not going to be in commissioner's court till the 20th, so we're supposed to go in front of the 20th. I assume all the committee members voted in its favor, so I assume the commissioners.
Since they got so much more ARPA money than us, why don't they just carry the full load?
Well, everybody's always about honor the contract. No, so that's where we are.
Commissioners, any questions for Judge Shane? Thank you very much,
All right.
and thank you for working your schedule to be here to
Well,
submit
thank
your
you
ideas.
for letting me kind of jump ahead, everybody. I really appreciate it. So back to it.
Ride hard, be tough.
All right,
Ms.
thank you.
Caitlin, finally! And you will get a copy of your PowerPoint presentation to Judge Shane?
I sure will, yes,
Thank you.
sir.
All right.
Alrighty, so some of the commissioners here have already heard this presentation before, but we're going to do it again for everybody's convenience. So I am Caitlin Barrett. I am the ARP Program Manager here for Grimes County, and my information will be attached to the PowerPoint, so y'all can reach out to me at any time. And a reminder of the allocation y'all are getting, it'd be $5,609,601. After the fees, it'll be $5,335,101. It's a lot of projects y'all can do, and I'm excited for y'all. So there are 5 areas that are allowable uses for funds. Supporting public health expenditures, responding to the negative economic impact, premium pay for essential workers, revenue loss, and investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. For the public health expenditures, these must show tie back to the COVID-19 public health crisis or a mitigation for future events. So you can do vaccine programs, medical expenses, testing, contact tracing, public health surveillances. You can do enforcement of public health orders and public communication efforts, enhancement of public health capacity, including alternative care facilities, support for prevention, mitigation, and other services in congregate living facilities and schools, enhancement to public health data systems, capital investment to these public facilities to meet pandemic operation needs, and ventilation improvements to key settings like healthcare facilities. Behavioral health care, so that includes your mental health treatments, your substance misuse treatments, and other behavioral services, hotlines and crisis interventions, and services or outreach to promote access to health and social services. Payroll expenses. This can cover your full payrolls and covered benefit costs for employees that are dedicated to the COVID-19 response. For instance, hospitals that have travel nurses, if they request additional funding, that is an allowable expense. And disparities in public health outcomes. So this is for your vulnerable populations, your elderly, your low income. This can be used to fund community healthcare workers, public benefits navigators, and so on.
Do you know if any of the hospitals or hospital systems were directly afforded any ARPA money either through national through the feds or through the state?
No, not directly. We have a couple of communities that have received requests from their hospitals, their local hospitals requesting funds for
Okay.
expenses.
So it's, right now it's just counties and cities?
Correct. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
For the negative economic impacts, this also must show tieback to the COVID-19. And then the distribution must be reasonably proportional to the negative economic impacts that they are intended to address. So you can't just give them 15,000 just because they asked for it. You gotta show documentation of why they need this 15,000 to move forward. So this includes job training to accelerate rehiring of unemployed workers, aid to households facing food, housing, or other financial insecurity, and funding survivor benefits to family members of COVID-19 victims. You can do loans, grants, in-kind assistance, or counseling programs for businesses to rebound from the downturn. Rehire public sector staff and replenish unemployment insurance to pre-pandemic levels, and build internal capacity to successfully implement economic relief programs. And again, assisting the pre-existing disparities, so investments in housing and neighborhoods, educational programs, and healthy childhood environments. Go ahead.
Caitlin, I had a question about the fund survivor benefits for family members of COVID-19 victims. Would that money be coming through this program or through FEMA? Is there two different buckets for that or what?
There are two different buckets. So there was discussion from FEMA that they were going to fund funeral costs for COVID-19 victims, but that is a different, funding bucket than what we are having right here.
But there is, that is available.
I believe so. I have not heard too much about the FEMA one personally. I haven't researched too much of it. I don't know if it's actually available currently.
It is available.
It is?
It
Okay,
is
so,
available. And if they check with the funeral homes, most of our morticians are pretty well up to date
okay.
on that, from what I understand.
Okay, so yes, there would be two different funding sources for that. So, for instance, someone who was the main primary moneymaker, for the family, passes away from COVID-19, you can do an assistance program to help them, adjust and assist them while, the other parent finds a job that can support both of them, things like that.
I want to ask Ms. Williams, do you know if all of our funeral homes are aware of that?
Yes, they are.
Premium pay for essential workers. You must be an essential worker. The next page does have a list of qualified workers, and the increase may not exceed $13 an hour. While ARPA regulations say you can do back pay, Texas Constitution does not allow for that. So it is kind of a gray area. We don't recommend our communities to do that, just because it doesn't agree with the Texas Constitution. Texas Constitution does not allow for back pay. While ARPA guidance says, yes, you can, it's a gray area, and I don't recommend going forward with that.
So where the judge just requested a supplement for 2021 work, and that's kind of why I asked that question. It's Grant Works' initial opinion, that's something that would violate the Constitution?
Yes, now you can go ahead and say, to get, X amount of dollars, $100 bonus. You have to start working at this date to be qualified for this amount, but it'll be a moving forward kind of thing. It's not considered back pay if it's a bonus. Does that make sense? There's ways to work around it. It just gets kind of cautious if you want to say, no, it's going to be back pay. So there is ways to work around it.
Okay, I'm glad you said that.
Mhm.
So what is the timeline that ARPA funds could, in order for us, say we had some workers that did not get compensated, what kind of timeline? Are you saying moving forward from this day or moving forward from what point?
The COVID pandemic started for ARPA regulations on January 27th, 2020. So moving forward from that, you can say, to be qualified, you have to be working for Grimes County or whatever agency from January 27th, 2020, in order to qualify. If you qualify, you get that bonus. So it's not necessarily looking, a back pay kind of thing.
So if someone was donating, or I say donating, at this particular point, because it was outside of the realm of their normal job, if they spent time, additional hours since last year, 2020,
Right.
then they can be compensated?
Yes. No, it just has to be looking forward at that point, so. You to qualify, you can say, you know, you have to have been working with Grimes County on that date, which would
Working
be,
with Grimes County. These
Or-
were employees that were already here.
correct.
Jesse, you look like you had.
Oh, no.
We're good, okay. So your essential workers are, you know, your healthcare workers in nursing homes, hospitals, workers at farm and food production facilities and grocery stores, your janitors and sanitation workers, public health and safety staff, your transportation workers and warehouse workers, childcare, education and school staff, and social services and human services staff. They must be physically present at their job, and this cannot substitute their regular earnings. It must be in addition to their regular wages. Go ahead.
The wages are not hourly, but salary.
Mhm.
How do you do that? You take the hourly wage and apply it to the time they spent.
I'm not sure. I've not had anybody ask me specifically for salary. From my understanding, it would just translate to an hourly wage if it was salary, so you would just convert it. And the revenue loss. So Jesse and Cinda have started working on this already. The revenue loss is pretty open. You can claim lost funds from the total ARP allocation and use them in a more unrestricted fashion. And there are, you know, there is a formula for this. GFOA, which is not in this slide, I apologize. GFOA does have a spreadsheet that you can input all this information and you can get the regulations for that. I mean, the amount of revenue loss. So again, this has a wider use. You can do, you know, your roads, which I know a lot of people have been asking that with our communities. You can do road infrastructures, maintenance, healthcare services, cybersecurity, reopen services, and provide debris removal that was not performed due to the decrease in revenue.
And this is a combined revenue.
Correct. There are certain revenue sources that don't count, but it's far and few in between. You use most of the revenue sources overall. And then investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So these funds can be used to fund projects that would be eligible under the Clear Water State Fund and the DWSRF. For broadband, it's for communities without broadband or you know, weak broadband services. So you must have a minimum of 25 megabits per second download or 3 upload, and the technology can be installed that offers reliable 100 upload download speeds. So your water and sewer infrastructure project, pretty much anything you can think of in terms of water and sewer, if it's already eligible for this the CW and the DW funds, it will be eligible here. So that's your lift stations, your old lead pipes to be replaced, drainage treatments, upgrading your sewer facilities with necessary road repair, inflow and infiltration, and backup power sources, such as a generator or solar panels. This also includes cybersecurity for your water and sewer as well. Your broadband infrastructure projects, so is to provide unserved or underserved locations with new or expanded broadband access. They really are prioritizing the last mile connection projects, but you can do the middle mile projects. And assistance to the households to support internet access or digital literacy. So for instance, with the fairgrounds getting Wi-Fi installed for your schools to come in during the summer or during, you know, quarantines, that would qualify.
What about libraries or community centers?
Yes. And these are the potential projects that we have initially discussed during our first call. Nothing, again, set in stone, but all of these are allowable projects. So that would be, you know, covering for the fairgrounds arena, the restrooms, the generator for the hospital and the new justice building, cybersecurity, the dark trace software, that is allowable, upgrades to the filtration and HVAC system for the Justice Center, broadband as well to the Justice Center, Wi-Fi at the fairgrounds, and the COVID questionnaires and PPE for the county clerks.
For those that are looking on to that list, that is not a prioritized list,
Correct.
that's a put it on the page list.
Yeah, just brainstorming, getting ideas to see, you know, what we do and don't want. Nothing's set in stone currently, correct?
And so we want to clarify too, if some of these are eligible under revenue loss versus the actual.
Correct. Everything on here, let me make sure, 'cause I have another list of running. All these qualify under something other than revenue loss.
We're just gonna pretend like we can read that list.
So, yeah, no, this is just to make sure it qualifies underneath something, you know. Yeah, this is, nothing about this is set in stone. This is
Yeah.
just making sure we are able to tie it back.
I'm just saying, we can't see the stone from here.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
What does something mean?
So all these, let me go back, something, this something, these
Under
funded,
bullet point.
yes, correct,
Because I know there's a lot of money out there, and
Right.
I'm just trying to figure out, but we're dealing with strictly with
strictly this, correct,
and revenue.
correct. Yeah, so all the ones that were on that last page, this, can be qualified under anything else but revenue loss. We can use it for revenue loss, but that just leaves the revenue loss open for any of the projects that don't qualify under other areas. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Okay,
But then the revenue loss, we can apply that to a wide variety with not as many attachments.
correct. Mhm.
And this is based on the original list that we gave you, not the updated list of
Correct.
what you mentioned
Mhm.
earlier. Okay.
But some of the projects have not been submitted.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, right.
Well, we've had some that have been submitted after our contracts, so.
Can I take it you're feeling better now?
Much better, yes, thank you, yes.
All right, I guess for now, you want to, maybe if you go over here to the bench where you can, if you want to capture notes or what have you, we're going to start asking for these elected officials, department heads to start
Okay.
submitting some of their ideas and thoughts with us.
Okay,
I tried to be courteous to those that I knew had an urgency to go first or second and then get out of here. I know most, all of you would like to go next and get out of here, but is there somebody that's on a really rigid schedule where you need to
I
go?
just have to be gone by like 2:30 because I gotta pick up Jackson.
Well, why don't you come on in?
Mine's not even
Today?
that big of a deal.
Ma'am?
I said, that's not even that big of a deal.
That's good, okay.
Alan couldn't make it today, neither him nor Kyla,
Can
but,
you
oh,
identify yourself?
I'm
for-
Stacy Mel with the Extension Office.
Thanks, Stacy.
The phones and internet are working better. I mean, we just want to make sure we stay on top of that so that they're not going out like they used to. We do think that we have mold in our office. I've talked to Al about that. So that we want to get that checked, and like the windows that need to be resealed, or maybe even get new windows, because there's bugs and stuff getting in all the time.
It is a nature center area.
Well, that's true, but it would help with the electrical costs too, so just putting that out there. And I mean, anything with the fairgrounds, we are all for it, because anything that happens at the fairgrounds benefits us, because we do programs out there. And so anything that is going for that, we are behind 100%, so. I mean, y'all could just throw in an
And this-
office at the
and this is-
fairgrounds for us.
This is not to, again, say yes or no, but since Al's here, what she's talking about on the mold and stuff, I don't know that that's ARPA money or potentially ARPA money. Is that just something would be normal our maintenance and repair?
That would be more of a question for Caitlin, but I did the preliminary walk around on Tuesday, I
Yeah.
think it was.
Yes.
And
Well, no, it
when
was Monday. It was Monday.
Monday.
This week?
This week, yes, sir. And she is correct, we have some problems with some windows. Mold, I have to look into that, I think I can do it a different way. I'll have to get testing done to see what I'm dealing with.
But I guess my question is if it can be addressed under employee health and well-being,
I was about to say,
then maybe it works.
they do a lot of entertaining of children, okay, in their office. They are an ag extension office. So children are always in for projects and meetings. So I would suggest maybe we look up at updating their HVAC system. The system and the windows were there when we got there. We did have a unit replaced maybe 7 or 8 years ago, but you know, it's not adequate for all the traffic that comes into that building. They have master gardeners, they all meet there. A better ventilation system would be proper for them. And in the initial scope of the building renovation, the windows were not addressed, so you have air infiltration from that also. So I do know that.
It gets really, where I sit, you can feel the cold coming in like when it's winter time.
That's fresh air. That might be good.
It might be, but it's still cold up there.
My concern would be to tie it to COVID based upon the children and the people that work with, you know.
The way I like to say it is that you're trying to sell what your projects to
Yes.
the federal government, because they like to know
That's it.
your reasoning and your proof as to why. So if you go in and you update your HVAC system and you say, okay, the HVAC system is going to be pretty much useless if we don't update the windows should be fine, because you got to contain that filtration in those buildings. So that
Right.
should be an allowable cost. I will double check with you on that, but that should be an allowable cost.
And I'd like to say this just in case nobody knows, some of them may not know. And I sent this out to some people. One of the quick tips that we received when we went to Austin was to keep in mind that you have to identify a need or a negative impact of COVID-19 to the public health emergency. Then you want to identify how the investment would address that particular need from the pandemic. And then you want to explain the investment would help the county respond to the disease itself or the harmful economic consequences. So, you know, most of the requests have to have some impact that occurred from COVID. So that's always been a concern of mine, because when we do back to school, we pack up backpacks, we're all over each other.
Yeah, I think that like the ventilation system needs to be cleaned out.
So it needs to be replaced.
Well, I mean, something.
So can we just inform everyone too that if there is a request that you guys are wanting to put in, that we are requesting a narrative from each department or each person that is requesting funds.
And when you say narrative, would you share with them a little bit of what you mean by that?
Exactly how Commissioner Walker explained it, just written on paper, so black and white, and how you can tie it to COVID, how it's mitigating it, or whatever has transpired due to COVID. So a narrative to that, we will then have to push that out and report that as well. So when we go in and submit our reports, we have to submit the narratives along with it. And it boils down to what's black and white on the paper.
Okay.
So,
Along with that, if you have a reasonable idea of what the cost might be, and some of these, you might not have a clue.
I don't, and I can have Alan, or we can print something up tomorrow and I can send it to
But
y'all.
the point is, so that we can kind of have a running total, because when we get to 15 million, we'll know we're about 10 million over budget.
Yeah.
And I can send that quick tip to you,
Okay.
a text message, because that's what I look at too.
Okay.
and if you'll just also forward it to both Cinda and myself and
Okay.
the judge, do you want to be included on that, or do you want us just to provide you with that?
I'd like to have one central point, and then y'all be the kind of information
So
center.
I'd we send that to you or,
Just to
No,
send it.
to
Okay.
Auditors.
okay.
Yep.
And that's it, but I mean, we would like a bigger conference room, but that's probably not COVID, so.
Well,
Just more
that's why it's
space.
social
Do you need
distancing.
social-
Yeah, I mean, we do, it's social distancing.
There you go, you gotta use the right.
But that's,
word.
I
Thank you,
mean,
Stacy.
other than that, we're good. So,
Thank you.
thank you. And I'll get that to y'all.
Yes, thank you.
Who feels they're kind of next urgent? Anybody? Anybody? Ms. Williams? You can't want too much.
This is that, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I would like
Would you
to,
state your name
Brenda
and position for
Williams.
the recording? Okay.
Crime Victim Coordinator for Grahams County. I would like to, possibly see a facility where, a group of, organizations can meet within our victims, for our victims, as such as mental health counseling, behavioral, and also for people that don't have transportation that need services for victims, such as I just went blank, I'm sorry. I just got a call from a law enforcement officer and it's just kind of,
I think some of the things we talked
My
about.
mind is
Can I
blank.
help you a little bit?
yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just got a call with sexual assault, so I'm kind of,
We talked about the need for, we're seeing an increase since COVID of risky behavior among our youth. You're probably seeing them in courts. We're seeing mental health issues exasperated and going through the roof. We're seeing domestic abuse. And as a county, we've always kind of had places outside of the county we might could reach out and get help. But everybody now have their own set of problems, so we're putting on hold as far as getting in facilities and things like that. But one of the things we talked about was an opportunity to have a place where people can come in and talk about mental health issues. They can meet with a counselor, they can meet with someone to address risky behaviors and those type of things. So I think that's where you were going with that.
Well,
if
and
you
also-
had a location.
a multi-purpose business for the family violence, children that are needing counseling, but we need a place where they can be able to come to, and especially women, because everybody don't have transportation. They don't have cars to go out to families to focusing or Phoebe's home, and so we do have a transportation issue. So if I could have something in Grimes County where they could all come and be able to have people come in and meet for their different issues. That's what I'm looking for.
Food, also food necessities.
Yeah.
You know.
And a clothing area. And what has happened since COVID transpired, many of our cases was not reported, as the law enforcement know. And so recently, some of the cases that happened maybe 8 months ago or 9 months ago are now being reported. And so we need, and they don't have nowhere to go. And so if you don't have anywhere to go and you were kept in that situation, other counties are taking care of their own issues. They don't have time to take care of our problems because they are so full taking care of their own. And so that's what I'm looking for, a multi-purpose building where we can invite people to come in and take care of different things.
Well, you mentioned not having transportation 3 times in your comments here. Are you looking at a facility more in Navasota or more in Anderson or just in Grimes County?
In Grimes County.
Okay, so if you had a BDI's victim or a Todd Mission victim, if we had a facility that was kind of central in the county that
Yes.
would effectively address the need that you're expressing to
That's
us
correct.
versus trying to go to BV-COG or that facility?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
okay.
yeah.
And I think Al, I think he might have something in store for that, or did you leave it up?
Yeah, I didn't put it in my narrative, but I was bringing that up on my 6th item.
And the other thing is if we could find a building that we could fix up in both areas, that's closer for the south end and also closer for the north end. Nothing hugely, but just something that's adequate to take care of everybody's needs.
Okay.
Thank you.
And based on your comments, when you get your thoughts all back together, would you draft that out for Jessie, submit it to her office?
will.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody feel like they have a short list of them? You don't have a short list, Al.
I was trying.
Chief, you have something, or are you just listening?
Both.
Well, come on up.
Well, I mean, some of us, I was gonna piggyback on,
Why?
Al stuff, so
All right.
maybe we'll kind of hit that together. I don't wanna do it.
Yeah, we might all want to piggyback with that.
All right, Commissioner Walker she said she has a short one.
I have a short one since the Economic Development Director is here, and I told him that I would kind of speak a little bit about what I think that I've been seeing him go through since the pandemic or since this year. The area we live in, we don't have pharmacies like, the only pharmacy we have is Rich Brother and Walmart. Currently, we have an economic development director who works with the chamber, who is testing several hours a day. I feel like it's beyond, not beyond him, but it's getting overwhelming for him, that perhaps some type of assistance, either in terms of, it's taking up a lot of his time. Johnny, would you like to kind of address that a little bit?
Sure. I'm Johnny McNally with the Navasota Grimes County Chamber of Commerce. And to continue on with that discussion, the program that was put in place with the governor's office, he said that they said, well, we'll provide you with the test kits and we'll provide you with PPE. Great, bring it on. And we would provide the time and the human resources. Well, the PPE they provided to us were the N95 masks, and that's it. So everything else that we need to run this, we've purchased ourselves, and we've had no way of getting reimbursed for any of it. That includes gloves and cleaning supplies for the office, and cleaning supplies for our hands, and antiseptic things that we need to use between people. And so those expenses have been borne by the Chamber of Commerce, and not something we anticipated, especially the way it's ballooned lately and the time that it's taken up. It's really skyrocketed. So anyway, it has become a financial burden, and I didn't anticipate we would have a means of recovering the expenses that we've had to do. But if this is an outlet for an area for us to apply for that, I'm all for applying for it. And if you need me to quantify that, I'd be glad to do that in writing and submit it to the auditor.
In the other direction, Judge, I think we might have sit down and talk to you about how much time is taken away from his position doing his regular job. And maybe some assistance to his office that would move, because what he does is economic development. Keeping small businesses, industries, all of those things functioning, because they're sending workers who are members of the chamber over for testing to make sure it doesn't shut down the whole workforce. So it's vital, the testing that he's doing, and when you call around, sometimes that's the only testing you can get in this area. So even some assistance to him, because many times he's having to shut that down to go do his regular job, you know, so it's kind of getting overwhelming for him not to have some assistance.
Two questions. Who are you testing? Question one, who are you testing?
I'm testing chamber members, their employees, and the families of the employees.
Okay,
we also
but
test.
as far as the run-of-the-mill Grimes County citizen, you're not testing them.
Yeah, I can't
No, it's
possibly.
the workforce.
So the question I would have, is the chamber the right venue to be conducting testing? I mean, if you're only testing a portion of the element and the rest is not having that
Well,
opportunity.
He's protecting the workforce, and because they're chamber members, they can send their workforce there. And then the workforce is bringing the families along with them, because if dad goes home, maybe he exposed the kid, and now the kid needs testing, or the opposite, you know.
And
So
I
it's the
understand-
workforce.
Commissioner, I understand where you're coming from, but I've had, I know 3 calls that I can recall that went to get tested, were turned down because they weren't chamber members, because you had to put some barriers or limitations.
Yeah, that's-
I have
And I
to.
get that. But there are 3 that I know businesses that didn't have access to that testing that are just as much a responsibility for our overview in the county as the chamber members.
He would have been overrun with testing if he's the only.
I don't deny it. I'm just
And
saying,
that's where I'm going with that.
okay.
That's where I'm
Yeah,
going.
and I have to tell you, we squint hard. If someone says, well, I'm not a chamber member, well, who does your brother work for?
Yeah.
Who does your cousin work for? Who does your aunt work for? And we try to work with people
Sure.
until we can find a connection. If they're a school student, NISD, well, these people and their families aren't members, but if they say, well, we go to NISD or we go to Anderson or whoever, I let them come in. I've had whole teams of softball kids come in,
Sure.
or volleyball. They all needed to be tested before a
And
tournament.
Johnny, don't misunderstand, I'm not saying you are pushing people out the door. I'm just saying that as we're talking about this, it's not covering all the citizens in the county.
That's
And
true.
And the question I have, is there a better venue? Because we like you back out on the street hustling business, okay? Not making people miserable, sticking stuff up their
Yeah.
nose.
I think you might be.
Piggybacking off Al.
We could turn it off to Al. But we, nevertheless, we are doing a significant number of tests,
Yes.
and we're absorbing the cost with,
Are you paying for the test?
we don't pay for the test, we pay for everything else,
Okay.
including that we pay for my time, we pay for all the other supplies that we need.
And that was
So-
the other aspect of it that I was bringing up. This is one of the essential workers that I was talking about, that salary or whatever capacity he gets paid in, that he hasn't received any kind of premium pay going out there with this dipstick. And he's the best dressed gentleman in Grimes County. In his suit coat and then walking it back in because he doesn't have PPE gear. He's been doing this, and I think it's worthy of compensation in some manner.
If this is an avenue to get those costs reimbursed, I would like to put in for it. Even though what you're saying is true, but I am one person, but frankly, I am the only person. I know people who have to drive to College Station and pay $25 a test or $125, and I'm saving them that effort and that money. And not getting,
And I have, and I don't think the court, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I don't think any of us have any reservations about you getting reimbursed for the costs that you've put out there already. And then if something can be done for the future, we can look at that. But Caitlin, you've heard the plea. so.
It would just depend on how the regulations are and what it turns out to be per hour. So that is something I would have to look into and make sure. I do think this is probably an opportunity to try and get something to relieve that pressure and testing off of you. So it is for the entire county as well. So I think that would be probably really good to get that pressure off of you.
and there's one other aspect, is that this generates waste when I'm doing the testing.
Sure.
I have biohazard bags. Great, I got the biohazard bags. I'm filling up the biohazard bags. Now, what do I do with the biohazard bags? Well, Tatum said, well, take them to your local hospital. Well, at first, they said they would take them. Then, when the time came to take the trash to them, they said, no, we can't accept it. There's a cost associated with it, and we can't accept it. So I've called clinics, I've called doctors, and gotten the same response. Well, there's a cost associated with that, and we don't want to bear the cost of your waste. And I said, well, just tell me how much it is, and I'll pay it. I just can't have 5 or 6 bags of biohazard waste sitting in my office. So anyway, that's another ongoing issue. And it's just another, there are expenses associated with what I'm doing. And this was a governor's program to give to chambers of commerce to help communities, especially rural communities, who have no other testing options. So,
And it's unfortunate that everything wasn't supplied to you, or all the kinks worked out, but I think it's worthy of consideration in some manner as far as being a premium essential employee, because this does help keep our communities, small businesses, industries functioning.
keeps them running on a day-to-day. I know Turner Pearson Folds, for instance, they have someone comes in and they're sick, they send them over to my office and I test them. And now they know, are they infecting the whole workforce, or is it just this, he's got a cold or whatever. And I can give them the answer in 15 minutes. All right?
And we'll write a narrative and get it over to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Mr. Peeler, everybody seems to be anxious for you to come to the podium. So why don't you-
I guess. Well, I got a quick, easy way to do this. Just sign the money over to me and I'll do it. That's quick and easy.
Put the federal government on.
And I'll work with Caitlin, and we'll just figure it out what we gotta put in the narratives. The first thing, I passed out my narrative. Some of the items that, I will be talking to is not on this narrative sheet. We'll talk about them later in it. The first one is the Justice Center, generator. You can see the narrative on that. It just gives the specifications of the generator. This will allow all systems to continue to run throughout the Justice Center, including the advanced filtration and UV lighting in the conditioned areas without becoming a dead airspace. That's a public workforce, public safety issue. If it becomes a dead airspace, it becomes more of a incubator type deal, because you have no heat, you have no cooling, so we're just incubating whatever's flying around in that air. It would also provide protection of the chillers and water piping during freeze. That total cost, that is kind of a ticket right now, that if we're gonna go with Collier and it's gonna be a change order, this is something that they really need to know because of the lead time of the generator. And the cost is $323,196. Any questions about that narrative?
And we already have a generator there.
We do. It only runs IT room and emergency lighting.
What is the value of that generator?
90,000.
So where would we move that generator?
We could move that generator right over here to run these boiler and chiller, so our pipes and stuff don't.
Because right now we don't have anything to do that.
No,
Okay.
once it goes down, it goes down.
Okay. All right, thank you. Number 2.
Okay. Furnish and install UV lighting in the 4 air handler units in the mezzanine. It gives you some, what we're planning on doing. This has already been approved, and it helps with multiple things. It's 99% effective in killing biological pollutants. They have flexible placement. It's all about public health. The only one that has now, that we have, and it has helped, is county clerk's office. When they were having sickness, a lot of smells, we installed 2 UV lightings, and that seems to help. That cost of that is $29,000. Oh, no. Yeah, $29,522.
Has that already been done, or?
Yes.
So we paid that in a Collier contract, pay.
Change order.
Okay, so how does that work? Do we just submit the change order for that?
It would depend on when it occurred. There's a certain date that it qualifies under. If it's before that date, it won't qualify for reimbursement. I will double check with that date. I believe it is January 27th, but I will make sure on that.
Yeah, it was this year.
Okay.
But do we just submit the change order to, is that what we submit as backup documentation?
Yeah, you would submit it to us, and that way we can put it on there, show proof, and you're able to, move that funds to wherever you took it from. Yes.
Right. Okay, so we need to get the change.
So that one's really been done. That one qualifies. That's out of the pot. Okay.
So, moving on, number 3 is the hospital generator that controls the life safety branch of the building. For the people that have got it electronically, there is a attachment of the sales and service agreement for replacement. Total cost for the hospital generator that controls the life safety branch is $225,000, $29,700 in electrical and engineering was already paid in last year's budget.
It hasn't been paid.
It's been billed.
It's been invoiced, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
correct. So,
Does that come out of LEP 21 money?
uh-huh.
We're waiting on the document. We have emails back and forth with them because they were new vendors who did it, and so we need all the W-9s and information to set them up before we
But the
can pay.
29.7 was paid, or is going to be paid by
It
Grimes
should be, because I
County?
think it was
It
dated
should
in
be.
September.
Yes.
So even though the reimbursement is going to St. Joseph?
Ma'am, there was an invoice that we have directly from the vendor that we have to set up the W-9, and then we have a reimbursement that we have to cut to St.
I
Joseph's.
sent an email where it also stated that St. Joseph asked that the check be made to St. Joseph or they pay for the work. Did y'all get that in email?
I'll have to double check on
Because I
that.
sent it to Angelica twice
Oh, really? Okay, yeah, no, I have the
with
invoice
special
sitting.
instructions on it.
Okay,
Okay.
Why are
We'll
we
give it to you.
paying, why are we paying the,
I don't know why.
the hospital?
it's like that.
Because the hospital I do know that answer. So the hospital paid for other things, and we agreed to pay the 29.7 out of the scope.
Yes, but since then, since the meeting we had, when he sent the invoice, he sent some instructions. So I'll make
Can
sure
I
she
meet with
get it
you?
and we can sit down and talk about it.
yes, meet with you after.
if you got a vendor out here that's not getting paid, and it's a delay of the money we give to St. Joe, I don't want that vendor putting a lien on the building, because that's our building.
No, St. Joseph.
We'll
We can check
sit
it.
down after the meeting if that's okay. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have a question for you. So the number 2, did we go through any sort of procurement policy on that? Is it 2 CFR 200 when we went to go move forward with that?
For the number 2, it's all under the contract. Like, we went out for the Justice Center contract, it was all in there, the upgrade of
Okay.
it was just a change order because we had a smaller generator. And so we changed it to the larger one when we found out about the ARPA funds.
Okay.
Number 2 is the UV lighting.
I'm sorry,
It's-
not the generator, the UV light.
Okay.
We
It's a
added
change
that,
order
it's
to
a
the
change
contract.
order. I apologize.
Al, how much was the generator again for the hospital?
323,196.
What is it?
For the hospital.
Oh, for the hospital. I am all over the place. Let me be quiet.
I'll just let you keep answering. That's
No,
more.
no.
225. That
That's been a
225,000, but that isn't our cost. That isn't all our cost. So we'll end up about 80,000, give or take 5. Because they'll have to pay.
They still are paying for a portion of it.
Yeah, they still pay 50%, I believe it is. Any questions on that?
You want on number 4 now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, everybody's on number 4.
So, as everybody knows, I'm in charge of the facilities, and just here in the last couple weeks, and Caitlin has, in our last meeting, she got me thinking. I'm kind of making a sell in our law enforcement center as a somewhat negative air cell by a bladder system made with trash bags. And it's working, except it's not completely a negative air cell, okay? There's nothing I can do around the door frame. I can do everything from air. I can bladder system that so it doesn't go out to the other cells. My suggestion, because we do not currently have a medical facility, so that is if something comes in, I'll just read you my narrative. Currently, the Law Enforcement Center of Grimes County does not have any negative air quarantine holding cells to house COVID-exposed inmates. This will provide a segregated area from any known communicable disease coming into the law enforcement center. That means if they picked somebody up from another county that is being tried or needs to be held at Grimes County, and if they know they got COVID, right now we have to drop them in the Sally Port, walk them all the way through, and then get to the last cell. So all of that has been exposed to COVID. The problem with that is everybody, they walk right by our booking, they walk right by our, come on,
Center, dispatch.
thank you, call center, dispatch.
Or quarantine inmates that were quarantined when they bring in.
Holding cells, other step cells.
Judges, magistrates.
Judges magistrating. So my thing is this, so I put 4 in there. It totally does go with everything Caitlin has got. Washington County, thank you for the contact, by the way. Washington County is doing this same exact thing. Walker County, excuse me, is doing the same exact thing because nobody was set up except for Waller County that has just put in a $35 million jail, and they were ready. They had a medical wing that had negative air cells. We don't. We're 20 years old. Who's seen this coming? So I would like to entertain. At this point, I've heard ranges from 500,000 to 3.5 million. I would entertain that. I would like to get some quotes on this just to see if it's obtainable. This is something that I think the law enforcement center should at least have for the safety of our inmates and our safety of our employees.
Okay, it's on the list. What I would request is that you, somewhere or another, get at least a thumbnail cost of what something like that may, because $500,000 to $3.5 million is kind of quite a range.
Yes.
So if you get it a little bit tighter than that, that would be
Okay.
helpful.
So the fifth one is the addition to the Justice Center to house adult probation, road and bridge, and environmental 911. This provides counseling and resources for citizens of Grimes County. This will also implement behavioral health. This also can be contributed to public safety, wastewater treatment, and drainage to the road and bridge department. And at this time, the cost is unknown on that because I haven't proceeded any further. We've talked about in past Commissioners Court about building a building up on the hill. It would be, in my humble opinion, it would be better we have green space for addition on the Justice Center. Everything would come off that. The HVAC, so their impact would be they're in a healthier office. We also all our sewer could come off there. We wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already there. We just joined to the Justice Center. Something that also.
So you want to expand the Justice Center before we even move in?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I mean,
It's all right, go ahead.
you said right narrative, so that's what I did.
That was a lot of discussion in Austin about buildings and expansion. What are you seeing?
We have a couple of communities that are granting money to special districts, such as their emergency services district, to get a building. For instance, Russ County, I'm working with, they are granting to their special district to do that. Expansion on buildings is kind of it depends on how you want to proceed with that. Overall, it is hard to say yes, that, building new buildings is allowable. There are some cases that it is allowable. For instance, if you wanted to wastewater treatment, that you need to actually install a security hub. You can build a building for that. That is allowable. But it really depends on how you want to proceed. with this, you can rehabilitate existing buildings, so it is, up to standard, that it's, not falling apart, or, it's up to, an actual, habitual a livable standard, or even a working standard. But, actually going out and building a entirely new building, it's hard to say yes to, as an
How about an addition? To get the facilities, 911, environmental, road and bridge, out of a failing building.
We do have another community, it's not one I'm directly working with, but another project manager spoke to me about that. They are doing a education and training center, but it is not all in that, it's not all of that in that building. Does that make sense? Like, for instance, they're doing, instead of just it being a library, they're also doing, COVID testing through in that particular building, and they are able to do that. So it would depend on how you sell it. You got to sell it very well.
So the adult probation, I'm not speaking currently, I'm speaking based on my recollection, provides behavioral health services.
That would be allowable.
Substance abuse and alcohol services. And just trying to accentuate what Al's saying there, you've got drainage issues through the road and bridge department, you've got wastewater treatment through environmental 911.
That should all be allowable. I would have to double check on it. I plan on all the stuff that we're getting through, all the descriptions, I plan on going through, tying it to an expenditure cost, because that's what, when you go to the Treasury and report on it, they're gonna want all that information. I am going through, one last time and matching them to the categories. So it should be, I would just need to double check one more time.
So if you were to expand, and as long as it included adult probation, but that expansion included all these other offices, as long as it includes that one, it
Yes.
would be okay? Because you mentioned the COVID, or the testing is one portion of that.
Yeah. I would suggest, 50% of it, the majority of it be related to
That's- yeah.
something,
To make sure that.
one of the bullet points I listed earlier, but
Right.
as long as it's a majority.
Yeah, I got it.
You had Ms. Williams talking about needing some services for folks, and that would very easily be incorporated into maybe a footprint that provides behavioral health services and other
Yeah, and that would be.
non-emergency medical services in there, counseling.
Right, yeah, no, and that would be allowable. I mean, if, she decides, no, that, she doesn't think that's a good idea or whatever reason, maybe there's something downtown that we can rehabilitate to be, a hub, or, in any of these other towns that we have in Grimes County too. So that is something that is allowable.
Any other questions? I'll move on to 6.
Go ahead, move on to 6.
The same thing, there's an attachment, St. Joe's emailed this to us. It's a new helipad at the hospital, to provide faster and more efficient life-saving opportunities. See attached photo. They're going out for bids. Again, that is not and correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Walker, this is not a full fund deal. We would still do our 50% match with them.
It's my understanding that they were gonna seek funding from the public or from some other.
They were gonna go to Navasota, is what I heard too, because the hospital knows everybody got ARPA money, so they're gonna seek out everything they can.
Yes. But I was told they were gonna go to the public and some of the other organizations such as the Lions Club.
Oh, okay. He didn't mention that to me.
Not the city of Navasota, but it was gonna be like the Hawaiians and the Lions Clubs, those type of organizations that give to benefits to help the community. You mentioned the helipad at St. Joseph. But what we saw was an increase of how many people they had to fly out of the whole county when the pandemic was at its height.
Right.
Because we also have inmates, two units here that we might be getting in. We were having to fly people out.
Right.
So while he's talking about the helipad at the hospital, we also have a location south Grimes County that we were talking about a helipad out there so that it did, you know, it could be local. They can bring them, get them to them faster. So even tying that, if you're gonna do one helipad, you might as well do two if they qualify under, you know, the emergency,
Right. If we see the data that, yes, there has been an increase from pre-pandemic to post, like during pandemic, if we have the data for that, yes, that absolutely counts. They're gonna want us to show the data that, for a lot of these, that, hey, there is a need for it, we have proof, here's the documentation. Because, you know, if the treasury goes and like, let us see your paperwork on this, on why you want to do these projects, we're gonna need to be able to submit it and actually show the numbers that, yes, this is why we want to do
we
this.
have numbers, we can get
And that
that
should
to
be fine.
you. Also, one of the problems with the hospital was where they currently have one, they have to move everybody's car.
Okay.
That was the problem.
Yeah.
That was a delay till they get everybody moved
Right.
before they can land.
Right. And yeah, I mean, that's an allowable cost, absolutely. That's not a problem.
Told you, just write that check to maintenance. So we'll go on to the 7th.
Not a seven.
I just, narratives come in later. You got 7 and 8. So 7 is with Mrs. Williams. There's several ways we can do this, depending on what the court talks about on buildings. If we're gonna do an addition, or if we're gonna do a new building up on the hill for the other ones, or if we're going to this area, what are we gonna do with this area if that goes? So there's an opportunity for this building, or Commissioner Walker has brought up the, I don't know anything but the morgue.
No, don't call it that. The old annex.
Okay.
Precinct 3 annex, where the health department used to be, that side was the better side. But what happened was, can I explain what happened?
Yeah.
During COVID, one of our organizations, which is Grimes Health Resource Center, when they shut the hospital down to visitors or anybody coming in, they also dislocated that office. And that's our Meals on Wheels program. That's our help you pay your utility bills, help you get
A
food.
lot of the BB Cop resources then.
Yes.
I used to work with BB Cop before I joined grant work, so I'm familiar with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so they had to be dislocated. And if it wasn't for her being funded, the director being funded by Grimes St. Joseph, they had a space for her in Madisonville. But Grimes County Services had to go to Madisonville, which was hectic for them. When we have an employee from Grimes County that works for them, she then had to go to Madisonville every day. They had to come leave things in the trucks for the drivers. It could have shut down a vital service that we provide to citizens if Meals on Wheels had shut down.
Right.
You know, so we talked about if there was a way, because if the pandemic, God forbid, gets any worse and they shut the hospital down again and they're dislocated again, that's a nightmare for them. So we talked about if that location that we already have, that's adjacent to the hospital, is right adjacent to the hospital, if we could, one of the wings that has 2 wings, destroy one wing and renovate the other wing, then we could also have offices. We also had telehealth medicine in there, and we had a little food bank in there, but we have, it's big enough to have other counseling services, testing center. That's what we were talking about earlier. That one of the testings, we could have a room where they do testing, those type of things. Services could be provided out of that location. You know, even if you had another location in the county that provides testing, that's still a great location. And it's a building that we have that with some work done too, if we don't have a number yet, and we could probably tie down some type of number.
Okay.
But the function of that office needs to continue whether the hospital shuts down or not.
I don't have number 8, she covered all of it.
So in 5 or 6 words, what is number 7?
Renovation.
Renovation of a county building to,
The annex, old JP3 annex.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, what is that building called again?
JP3 annex. Old.
It's the old one.
old one.
On Judson Street.
Thank you.
So, I mean, that could go either way. If, depending on what the court says on, out there on the other building, the addition or another building, depending on how this goes, we have this building open, we have other buildings that are open if you want to keep that in the center, or we have one closer to Navasota. That's an option for the court. Know that maintenance is always here to support you.
Well, I'm not going to recommend we burn the morgue.
Just bulldozer, Jerry. I said just use a bulldozer.
So that's my spiel unless somebody else wants to piggyback on me, and if not, may I be allowed to
Did you have a
leave?
number 8?
No, she covered it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner, can I leave?
Sure.
Yeah.
Whoever would like to approach the Diane, Miss our district clerk, Miss Diane LaFleur.
Okay, Al's already spent all the money, but.
That's what I was gonna say.
Just mainly turn in my narrative. Thing. It's all spent.
Yeah, it's just a drop. Can you imagine, while you're handing it out, there were counties that received hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay, we're still a fledgling county, we're small. This is a drop in the bucket compared to what they got.
I know.
And I'm sure they have bigger headaches too on how to spend it. So I just want the citizens to realize, it seems like a lot, but when you start talking about broadband and the areas we have to cover, those type of things,
Goes real fast.
it goes fast. And therefore, there are other buckets of money, and that's what one of them I told you about this morning. Take advantage of the broadband benefits that you can get now. Because it's going, even if we got it, it would take a while to implement.
Go ahead, Ms. LaFleur.
Okay, ready? Okay, I'm gonna try to keep mine brief. Like I said, I was kind of teasing, but not really. I know that there's not enough money out there for what we need, and I know there's lots of needs, but I'll give you a little example. We had a jury, we were supposed to have a jury on Monday, and we had by this time, about 35 people in the courtroom. And the judge came in and told us that someone in there had symptoms of COVID, and he excused everybody, and everybody ran. But the courts have just as big a problem as everybody else. But with that said, what I'm requesting is some help with my digitizing what records I have left. And that is because of the accessibility we've had tons of Zoom. Our judges have just now gone back live, as Judge Cheney told y'all this morning. And with the Zoom, the judges can have more access to the older records, because our family court's the worst, and that's Judge McLean, because those records, the kids, I mean, when it starts, they might be 2 days old, and when it ends, they're 18. So we have to keep the records available at all times. And the total, I'm just going to give you the figures. The total is over $300,000 to do all from 1993 to 2012. That's civil records only. I do have records management money.
What did you say again?
It's in here. It's 390,
Next to
and
the last page.
And that's not the total because we have to pay LGS to implement it, which is not a lot of money, but it's a cost. And they can't give me the figure until I can give them a figure. And what LGS explained to me was if we do 10 years at a time or 3 years at a time, it's going to be a fee every 3 years. If we do it all, it'll be one fee. So I don't know how much more, doing it in chunks instead of doing it all at once. I'd love to get it all done, which would take us through 2012, and then the rest of my records are already online.
You're online back to 2012, right?
That is correct. And some of this is in there, and it's accessible in LGS, but it's minimal. It's like just the orders or just the applications. Because when that was done, there was no COVID issue. And so Gage just had just minimal stuff that was in the file scanned. Now we really need everything that's in the file because of COVID, and we want the judges and anybody else, well, the total public, to be able to bring them in and see them. Let's see, any questions? Like I said, I've got it all here. And
So it's just one request, but it's 390,000. Okay.
But I'll take whatever piece of the pie y'all will offer. Because my records management is very small, and it'll probably take about 20 years to get it all done, chomping at what records management. I don't really get that much. So, any questions?
Is this just because, the reason it's 400,000, is it just the manual labor involved in it?
No. Well, yes and no. They have to pay their people to scan everything.
Sure.
But, which I talked to you previous about
Staples.
depending on how we give it to them. If we give it to them with all the staples and brads and all, then there's another fee, which would take it over the 400,000. But like you had suggested, which I never thought of, to just maybe hire temporary help to come pull staples and get them ready to scan, which wouldn't cost.
And Caitlin, I guess the question would be to you, if we brought somebody in on a temporary basis to do material prep for getting these records in electronic form, I mean, we're gonna be paying them, and if you approve it and us paying them, why wouldn't it be approved with us paying that person?
I believe it would be allowable. It could be considered kind of like a job training program, and you can get them to like get familiar with that, and that would be part of their job, would be to come and start working through, start preparing it for it to be digitized.
Right.
Sorry, but yeah, I don't see why this would be an issue with trying to hire somebody out to get this. Again, I would have to double check and make sure and read all through the documentations for ARPA to make sure, but as of right now, I don't see why that would be an issue if we could sell it as a job training program.
And then I guess the other thought on that is, LGS is going to certainly have their profit in there. If you had your team say, hey, we're going to digitize our records, is that something they could do? I mean, you need more people to do it, but could you do that?
You mean my staff?
Yeah.
Because you're gonna pay time and a half
Well, no.
overtime
No.
if you get, okay, I'm
No,
sorry.
what I'm getting at is, if you hired 2 more people and you paid them $50,000 a year, and you've got somebody pulling staples and you pay them $25,000, that's $125,000 a year. We could do that 3 years at $375,000, and we say,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
if we did it ourselves.
I see what you're saying. Hire our own people to do it
Right.
on a temporary
Right.
basis.
And
Well,
I
I
don't know if
think
that's
that's what
worthy or
the county
not, but
clerk did.
if you do it in 3
Didn't they,
years.
didn't
Family search.
David do, he's hired some company that came in and scanned everything? I mean, I don't know what it would cost.
He didn't hire additional personnel that I recall to do.
He hired
No,
a company.
but I'm saying,
Company
you-
that came in and scanned everything.
Well, you gotta have a scanner.
I see. But I'm just, I gave you a number for 3 years. What if they did it in a year? What if they did it in 2 years, We're $150,000.
Oh, yeah, I'm game for
And-
doing it anyway to get it done.
Sure. Andrew?
There's still probably gonna be the cost associated with their uploading, whether or not our personnel is able to fully upload all those documents the correct way. I don't know LGS, they're online, the stuff that you're going to be uploading. I don't know if there's a specific way that they do that, or if it's very similar to what your clerks already do when they upload images. There may be a difference in that process with it being older files. That'd be something else.
And that's a fair thing to research. I'm just asking some very broad questions.
Well, and let me just say, I'm gonna pull a
It's just
little
like,
plug.
Caitlin, no offense to you, but I told Jesse, I said, why don't we hire another auditor in-house to do our monitoring? That way, we're not paying Grant Works.
No,
And,
that's fair, yeah.
It's not that we haven't already grown attached to you, but,
Right.
if we could get it done for $150 versus $275, you're out of here.
Yeah, no, that's fair, yeah, I understand.
I just want to pull a little plug for LGS. When we first started, and I think even till now, my CPS judge, my AG judge, and my 2 district judges, and I think Judge McLean too, they all gave them access to LGS and didn't charge for it. I don't even know that they're charging now. Do you, Andrew?
What?
All the judges that have
They
access
charge.
now, but they didn't from the beginning. They let them go for like 12, at least 12 months, I think.
Yeah, weren't they working out the bugs?
Well, they're
Yeah.
charging now, so
Yeah.
anytime we add.
Yeah.
Add judges. Yeah, oh, I'm sure.
Because we just added, or we're supposed to be adding
Walker.
12.
Yeah, Walker. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you, to be
Okay.
considered, and Jesse's got this. Okay?
Thank you.
Next, Mary Ann. If you want to get records stored, no way. What you got?
Well, then I just need to leave.
I have a couple of things. One is for tax office, and one is for the historical commission. There's 2 more copies.
We have it. The narrative, is that
Yes.
the same thing as the narrative?
Mary,
Okay.
would you identify yourself just for the record?
Mary Ann Waters, tax assessor collector for Grimes County. I want to talk about the second page I gave you guys first. As you know, we started doing the restoration on the tax rolls that we have, and this year I was not able to get funding to continue to do that. Since COVID-19, well, pre-COVID-19, I used to let these people come in and I would show them where the records were and let them go look for them. Since COVID-19, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm having myself or my staff is going and pulling records to see what we can do to help them. Because I don't want those people in my office. They already come in there coughing and sneezing and everything. I don't want them back behind where we are. So, my proposal is to get those records that are not restored, to get them restored and get everything digitized so that we could put this on a computer system and they could possibly come into the office, but my goal is to get it all over at the appraisal district, where they can go into the appraisal district. They have to go there anyway, and they could go on their computer and they can look it up, and
themselves, because they have public access to a computer, so they could see any of the records that we have. I have an anticipated cost, and I don't have a good hard cost that I'm thinking is probably gonna be about $200,000, because we still have about $76,000 to finish up the restoration on the records that have not been completed yet. And right now, I believe we are restored up to about 1908. And we have probably from 1908 to about the 1930s to still get restored, because most after the 30s are in pretty decent shape where we could get those digitized without having to have those restored. Anybody have any questions?
Next time use commas with your numbers. You got so many zeros in there.
Oh, you can't count that fast? All right, I will. Okay, now I'm gonna change hats. For the Historical Commission, I'm the chairman for the Historical Commission. As you know, we were donated, the Historic Anderson donated their park to us that contained 4 structures. Well, really 5 if you count the gazebo, and it had the old bridge from, I don't remember even where it came from, that's all sitting there. Since COVID, people have been kind of using that park to get away from crowds, to get where they could spread out and have more room and for it to become a gathering place. I know we did have in June a group that wanted to use it because it was outdoor space where they could social distance. They didn't have to be all up on top of each other. I have a few things that I would like to ask for on this. We've already torn down one building that was falling apart, and it was really a safety hazard, and so we've already gotten that down. We would like to relocate what is considered the general store, but in order to do that, we're going to have some prep work done to the site, some site work, and then to have that building moved, and it needs a little bit of restoration to it as well, which I'm just put at a approximate cost of about $10,000 to get that moved. Number 2 is the restoration of the log cabin. The log cabin is has a historical marker on it. And it is really needs to be restored. We would like to kind of turn it and relocate it a little bit, and we figure the cost to do this is going to be approximately $500,000. The repairs.
I'd rather just burn it down.
No, you can't. Got a historical marker on it.
I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
I know, I heard all that.
You had to be this morning's court to appreciate
I heard
that.
The house that we use as the museum, it is in much need of repair. We don't want to relocate it. It's in a good spot. And actually, I have in that line number 3, I had to restore, to fix this building up and this general store. We had $200,000 in there for both of those together. These are just rough figures. I have not gone out to anybody and spoke to anybody about it. There's a gazebo out there right now. It's old and it really needs some repair work, and I would really like to completely push it over and burn it. No, not burn it, push it over, destroy it and rebuild it, a nicer one, and one that's in a little bit safer, and maybe make it ADA compliant, because one we have is not. And that would be approximately $15,000. Also, the property needs fencing to keep cars from driving up in the middle of the park, which would be around 20 to 30,000 to go all the way around the whole park. It's a possibility that we would take the old bridge and repurpose it into a stage area for concerts. That would be approximately, they got 150,000 on here. I don't know that would take that much.
That's 15,000.
Yeah, it's 15, I got it wrong. Okay, yeah, I do need to use commas. And the very last thing that's not on here, because I didn't think about it in time, is we have no public restrooms out there. So if we're gonna have this park where it's open and available to the public, we probably need to get some public restrooms in there. And I just thought of that when I was sitting here a while ago, so I have no idea what cost on that would be. Okay,
That's it?
that's it.
Marianne,
That's
thank you
enough,
very-
isn't it?
Thank you. You've given us some thought with some different ideas. I'm teaching on that log cabin, but, I mean,
I know.
$500,000, that just,
And that may be quite a bit high, I don't know, I have, like I say, we're just kinda estimating, because it's gonna have to be dismantled to move, and then rebuilt back up again, that's
The
what,
availability of companies that do that type of work as well.
it's special, it's a specialty
over
thing.
500,000, I think you can find plenty.
You might be surprised about that.
All right. Sir? No. Who would like to
Where it is.
jump up next?
450, I'll leave it where it is.
Go ahead.
Okay, so, hello
Would you identify
guys.
yourself for the TV?
Yes, my name is Lucy Bear, I'm the Grimes County Elections Administrator. So a couple of things that we're gonna, I guess, pitch to you guys. This is a very generic narrative, but it involves multiple departments. The first two would involve just mine, but then it could involve also HR as well. Jesse, I'll send this to you in a little bit more detailed fashion. So, actually, can I borrow yours real quick? Thank you. So, one of the things we want to look at, when we've originally upgraded to the new electronic, or the new voting machines that we have, at that time, the machines were just certified and did not certify their curbside machines, which we discussed during Commissioners Court. We knew that going into this, that the state had not certified and approved those curbside additions. We were pitched the idea to get them sold to Grimes County once they were certified earlier this spring at a discounted cost. They're willing to still honor that discounted cost, and the reason I'm bringing it to you guys is because it's a very minimal cost. It's anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000, so it's less than $10,000. Number one. Number two, we've got the grant money available. We might as well, kind of pay attention to elections sometimes. But the biggest reason is this will increase our availability to provide curbside services on a more regular process, a more regular occurrence. We can still do it now, but in some areas it's a little bit limited because of the fact that the machines that we have right now, which are good, there's nothing wrong with them, they're not as light. They're not as easy to carry out to the curb as the new addition that we could purchase. Sometimes some of our election workers are a little bit older and they might struggle a little bit to pick up, put on a cart, and wheel it out to those locations. We know curbside voting is becoming a thing. It's not going away, y'all, whether you like it or you don't like it. It's going to be something that's going to be requested more and more. The bigger the election, the more curbside voting we're going to get. In the presidential, we did have a lot of that.
So the 6,000 to 8,000, how many machines is that?
That's going to be one curbside machine per voting location. So it'll be up to 11 because we always have an extra.
So you're talking 66 to 88,000.
No, I'm talking 6,000 to 8,000. It's an upgrade to the machines we have. So it's basically the machines that we have right now, this is an add-on to it to make it lighter, make it easier to actually put out. So it's not going to be per machine. This is the total cost.
For all the machines?
For all the machines, yes ma'am. Yeah.
Well, I'm confused. I don't know how you add on and makes it lighter.
It's different, smaller parts, smaller. So if you guys, which I know you all did, voted in the fall, those machines are in a big white suitcase. So basically what this does is, it adapts the machine and allows us to take the portable portion out of it and make that portable. I wasn't gonna go into all of that, Judge. But it does make it, basically it makes it a tablet and not a suitcase, okay? So that's where we're at with that. my second narrative on this is we have talked before about the fact that we struggle with staffing in multiple departments when it comes to when we were hit with natural disasters or COVID. We know that. Several department heads have gotten up here and talked about staffing. We know that we have telecommunication openings right now. Mary Ann sometimes has 2 or 3 part-times, correct? One part-time. One of the things that I've discussed with some of the department heads and with 1 or 2 of you on the court is there are other programs that operate temp staffing positions and temp staffing programs in multiple departments. Basically, you cross-train, those people work in multiple departments, and they're utilized without having to say, we can't get that job done because we don't have the staff. Judge Cheney just got finished talking about that. It's something that we could consider. It is something that ARPA does cover because of the fact that it is covered under an essential, and Caitlin, remind me? Yep. Based on the fact that it does cover essential workers, and it also gives back and develops the economic value of our county. Our county's unemployment rate has boosted up to 8% right now, so that will also kind of help with what we're looking at and how many people we have employed within the county itself. Now, with ARPA, there are limits to that, which Caitlin did cover in her PowerPoint. I gave you guys a generic cost for this. If we had somebody that we paid, typically for this area, a substantial rate is $14 an hour for a sustainable living wage. And I'm aware that some of our positions pay less than that within the county. If we do that, it could cost us, at a 25-hour-a-week person, anywhere from $19,000 to $22,000 a year. This would not be a perpetual cost because we would only use it during the timeline that the grant is applicable, which is up into 2026. We would use this to justify the backlog that we have within multiple departments and multiple areas. Now, with that being said, we'd have to find the people to bring into this, which is why you would want to market it correctly to certain age groups that are right now unemployed, which are typically 18 to 35-year-olds. So that's a lot of data. Sorry, but it is something to just consider, and I can give you guys a little bit better narrative on that. I just didn't have all the facts until right before the meeting for that. Okay, last one. So this...
Just a moment. So on that, Jesse, how would y'all handle that? Would you have them designated like the 424 or to my department, and then they'd be farmed out to these other areas? How would we handle that from an HR and payroll and auditing standpoint?
Can you give me some time to think on it? Because this
Sure.
is the first I've heard of it.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
because we're doing it by position, and position is based on departments too, I'd have to think about it to figure out the most efficient way to do it within our system.
I guess the easiest way would be budgeted in one department, and then that department would disperse the person out as needed to different areas.
Correct.
Well,
Potentially.
But then you're not keeping up with which department they've worked with. It just, we can discuss it
Yeah.
a little bit later.
Just a question, because I know how
Yes.
crazy it
all
gets
of
real quick.
It does, and this, I will tell you guys, because my background is working with grants in a similar situation as this, it is very hard to implement something like this across multiple departments. You've got to look at different funding streams, different codes that you have to use, but it is possible to do and would solve some of the issues without doing long-term staffing and having to worry about cost of healthcare, things like that, which sometimes we don't want to
It may just
have.
be under the grant fund itself, create the salary line under the grant fund in that position. It may just be as simple as that.
Sure.
Which we've
Because it would
actually done that within my department. We funded our staffing for the presidential election within 3 different funding streams for staffing, so we've done that before.
Okay, next.
Okay.
Sorry.
Surprise. No. Okay, so last thing. So Kat Lee is our 911 GIS trash, all of it. She's also former elections. I work with Kat Lee a lot when it comes to our mapping and development of what software she does and how we develop our maps, because I have to depend on her maps to provide the services that I need for my people. One of the things that we talk about a lot is that sometimes we are limited in what we can provide and the maps that we can do and how we develop it because of she is our GIS department. She is our one GIS person for us. So there is sometimes a delay in services because it depends on her workload as well. Then the other thing as well is I believe the BVCOG owns and operates the license that we use for GIS, so we don't have full rights and full operation of that. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Kat. One of the things that we've been talking about and we have been batting around for a very long time now is how to grab the bull by the horns, so to speak, and wrangle our own GIS and make us almost self-sufficient within that. between Kathleen and myself, we talked about how can we do this to where it supports both elections, anybody else, so our emergency management coordinator, our EMC, CAT's department, anyone that depends on her maps, like the school districts, where we have full-blown GIS, full-blown support within her department, and actually have the license, which would be a perpetual cost to us eventually, but have that to where we have full control of the licensing, which means all updates and all layers, to where we can develop and operate our own maps. And I'm sure I'm not explaining that as best as possible, but it's something that we looked at. On your narrative, this is a cost that's unknown, other than the fact that we know that the licensing could cost about $7,000 a year.
7,000 a year.
Yeah. Here's why this might be important to us. Right now, we depend on her and an outside agency to provide the mapping software, the licensing, and provide the actual updates and everything that we need. What happens if she's not here? What do? We don't do, because it's her. I'm not trained in that software. I depend on her to do it. I can develop my own maps roughly, and I have done it in the past, but they ain't pretty. They're not as pretty as what she gives us. Also, too, we use that to develop where we're going to do polling locations, how she's going to develop her trash services. VFDs depend on her, the sheriff's office and the dispatch, and I don't want to speak for those departments, but depend on her as well. Honestly, out of every program and every department head that we've listened to today, if I can actually stand up here and say the most important one that might need a little bit of attention is how we respond and do our emergency services and how we actually do our mapping, because that overlaps almost every department that we're served. So I don't have any cost for that, but it is something that Kat and I are playing with. We do know generically that it could be an initial cost of $7,000 for at least the licensing, which would give us control of the mapping.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I piggyback on you?
Yes, ma'am.
I was going to speak to the court about this, but during the onset of COVID, when we started trying to report to the public what was going on, where the cases were located, emergency management in the city of Navasota came to Catherine to produce these maps that we were seeing every week on where, the cases were located. That took additional time for her outside of her normal functions.
Yes.
And even hours after work, she would work these maps when David would give her, emergency management, would give her the numbers that were reported from the health department, and she would map them so that they could put them out almost every Friday, wasn't it, Kat? She was never compensated for that. And I just felt like it was worth something for her to be able, that was something the public was screaming about. We want to know, where are they? We don't want just numbers. And when you would get dumped a batch of numbers, because they were behind, that would make the work even greater for the emergency management team. She is the assistant emergency management, but she wasn't compensated for that, so
I have a master's in GIS, so I know the workload that she's having to do. I feel for her, because that's a lot of work she's doing, so
And
I
she
definitely
did
feel for
that
that.
from March up until
Yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, she still
Yeah.
kind of does it.
They
Doesn't stop.
still be doing it, okay, but I just think that it's something worthy to be considered, to be an essential worker that should be compensated for the work that she's done. Because the public saw all of her work, so.
That's not to say, if we go with GIS being, the COVID variant monitoring and stuff like that, that is, we
It's
can
allowable.
follow the cost underneath that. That won't be a problem at all for us to do, a GIS, pay for our GIS and Esri and get that software
And
to
so
y'all.
that licensed software.
That would be
fall under
allowable.
that way.
And when she says, my mapping software that I have now that I use is licensed through COG. So I only have it on one workstation. So if I'm using it, I can't say, hey, Philip, make this map for me. Or Lisa needs to look up an address while I'm trying to get something done. She can't look it up because I only have that. If I'm using it, then nobody.
You only have access.
Yeah, I only have access. I have to get up and move away for Philip to do what I'm asking him to do, or.
So this our license could be put on our devices.
Yes, you buy a
Right.
license for
Yes.
X amount of.
Where other people could use them
Yes.
while you use them also, and then they're cross-trained, just
Well,
in case they're
there's,
out.
but there's some other
Yeah, but-
stipulations that need to go
Yeah, we-
along with using our data.
We
Okay.
want to make sure that if this happens, that when we look at licensing, this needs to be fully controlled by CAT's department, with an IT support, of course, but we don't want departments, and excuse me, no disrespect, but we don't want departments or Commissioners Court or someone else developing maps with the county.
No, no,
Yeah,
no.
that needs to be
I'm
fully under her
strictly
control.
her department.
We would look at, like my department would want to just see, be able to play with the visuals, develop the map that we need, and then she therefore can actually produce them for us.
Yeah,
And-
I would build for them, and
Yes.
then they would be able to see them and look at layers and kind of build the map that they want
So my
from what I
point was,
provide them.
those that are within your office.
Yes,
that
ma'am.
You know about, you know when they using it, not outside. I was just talking about the people in your office.
And that may change the price a little bit. I don't know how that, if it's by user license or if it's by installation, they'd have to get more.
It's a couple, it's two different ways, like from COG, they pay one price and they have X amount for X amount of licenses. So,
Would you still be going through COG to get the license?
I would still have to go through COG
Uh-huh.
because they actually pay for extensions that I use
Okay,
with ArcGIS
okay,
to do mapping and prepare maps for PSAPs.
okay, so we would be paying for the extension.
From my understanding, both.
Yes.
Right,
So,
yeah, because you
yeah.
need the license, but you also need that extension to do certain things,
Okay.
correct?
Yeah, it's,
Yes,
yes. But yes,
You've
for her.
just been
Yeah.
all over Big COG, haven't you?
I was with BB Cog for a while, yeah, I was there for a year, and the person behind me was Megan, that was
yeah.
in
There
GIS,
you go.
so
Yeah.
we talked quite a bit.
Okay.
I don't want to be the wet blanket, but depending on what the cost for the extension is, we have to equate that to how much downtime some of Kat's people are experiencing, waiting on her to get off of the system so they can get on.
Yes.
You know, if it's a fairly regular, commonplace type of thing, to keep the efficiency of the department up, once we know the cost, then that might be a worthy venture to do. But if
Yes, sir.
we're just talking about once every now and then, that they're having to wait for Kat to get off,
Yeah.
then it
Well,
might not be worth the money.
It would be something that she would have
Yeah.
access in her office too,
So, but.
so she can
She already
pull
has a lot of free time.
pull that up.
I do. I only work 5 times a year.
Yeah.
That's the rumor. I mean, we're just mainly looking at where are our services where there's a potential delay of services, and we know emergency services, medical response. I mean, these are areas that have all, in the past 2 years, experienced probably the biggest delay from Grimes County. And that's because of either lack of staffing, money, or we don't have these kind of programs within our own entity. So that's all I have, guys. Any other questions for me? Thank you all very much. Thank you, Kat.
Tom, are you in listening mode, or you got a?
I'm in listening mode,
Okay.
you know, we got 3 people and, you know, we scanned everything that we have and sort.
I didn't know if you needed money tree fertilizer or something like that.
Yeah, probably so, but, you know, the only comment, the email that I sent you that, you know, it has to do with something she brought up, was about paying people who had to work from home.
Right.
During COVID, or had COVID and still work from home, or the sheriff's department that were exposed to COVID and things like paying them an additional amount, which I thought was kind of a good thing.
Chief?
I don't have anything new to present really. I just want to kind of highlight a couple areas that were already brought up. Obviously, the main function, spoken with Al, is the whole
I'm
medical
sorry,
wing.
would you identify yourself for the recording?
Chief Todd Green, Grimes County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you.
About the medical wing, because we've had a couple inmates that have had COVID. We're fortunate enough to get them out of jail, but you know, just an instance is the way the whole system is you know, I had 2 officers, rest of one we didn't find out till a couple days later. The gentleman had COVID, so now I had those 2 officers exposed. Now had all the booking officers exposed. Those booking officers had some of our dispatchers exposed, and it's just multiple. Now I have this individual in a holding cell with other inmates, expose them, and it's just a whole trickle-down effect, to the point, at one time here recently during this Delta version that came out, we were down just to 3 dispatchers. We were having to pull all our other dispatchers from other areas just to even kind of survive over that. So that is a kind of a high priority, at least on our end, and to be able to have a design where there's not much interaction because, they're getting dressed out and everything, they're coming in, it's next to the kitchen, and it just can trickle down into all the other cells, and then at some point, you don't have the staff, you got too many inmates, then you gotta look at trying to bring them to out of counties to hold them, which can get very expensive real quick, especially once they find out it's gonna be a COVID issue. So, that is definitely an issue on our end. Along that, the way the whole building is designed, I got return areas and coming in different offices, it's feeding the cell that we're using for quarantine, which is going into our dispatch, and the whole filtration system I think should be looked at and examined. Next, there's a couple things. If you are looking at some kind of testing deal, we have a person that does testing, but like Mr. McNally was saying, we had to extremely limited because we're using our nurse who provides medical procedures for the jail. We are testing Grimes County employees only, but we will not test our families, and we're not testing because we're going on vacation or anything like that, so we have real restrictive. But so if there is something that's going to be into the works as putting, widespread testing maybe for everybody in county, I think that's something that should be looked at. Obviously, if helipad gets adopted, maybe one, I know Anderson Fire Department and the school was working on looking at some donating land for one, since when the new Justice Center came, it took our helipad out, and we don't have a replacement, so maybe that's something to be added in on there.
Chief, didn't they put a helipad just beside the old gymnasium? There's one there.
Yeah, I just don't know it's fully operational, what all left they got yet.
It landed today. Yeah, when we were doing the Masons, so we can tick that one off.
Okay. And then, obviously, any infrastructure, fiber optic stuff, obviously look at the phone systems at our office. When this virus went out, our phone systems were lost for several days. There's no redundant system built in when that system was put in, so we lost phone systems contact from our citizens that need any emergency help, calls for service, anything like this. So that's a big issue, big public safety issue. I think not having any redundant systems in there for that phone system. So not sure if y'all could, IT could look at that and maybe work that in. I know he was looking at doing a redundant system after I voiced some concerns about that. So I'm not sure if this could work in there.
I think they've already switched to, or...
Well, we switched to another provider, but if that provider phone line gets cut...
If they get hacked, the same thing.
We're still out. There has to be a redundant system in place, because when we did the last phone system, and when it got approached and it was approached to us, I was very contingent on, bringing in analog lines and stuff, so we had backup phone service. Obviously, the situation got missed, and next thing we know, we're getting a new phone system, and then nobody's contacted us about any redundant system. So I think that definitely needs to be addressed, not only for the needs of the office, but for all the citizens of the county trying to reach, because we provide dispatching for the EMS, for fire, police, vehicle accidents. So that's a big issue. That's all I had.
Well, thank you. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you.
Talita, you just open up that doorway, you got a couple
I'm gonna
inputs?
listen for my phone too, but just real quick, I want to piggyback off some of the other ones. They hit some of the ones that I was going to talk about.
Would you identify yourself with the camera?
Yes, Talita Coleman, HR Director.
Thank you.
So I was doing a little bit of research, and I would like to see maybe some of our essential workers, our frontline workers, to receive, I think it's the essential pay, which is like a one-time bonus. So the county's not locked into paying those employees on a continuous basis, but if we could give them some type of compensation for those that actually had to work through the pandemic and those that are still currently on the front line that are exposed daily. Two would be, as y'all were talking about a facility for counseling, we have a lot of employees who were directly affected by COVID, whether they lost a loved one or a close family friend. I think if we brought somebody in that they could talk to and talk about their feelings and, get some counseling, that would be beneficial. Another thing that I came across is if we can supply some type of on-site training for health and wellness. I know TAC does provide some, but if we could bring in maybe an actual medical profession to talk about the COVID and how it can affect your body, whether employees should or should not get vaccinated, give somebody, better information. Because a lot of people are getting their information off the internet, and the internet's going to go whichever way the internet goes. You can find pros and cons to all, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, beliefs. But if we actually had like a medical provider that could come in maybe once a month and counsel our employees, and then I don't know if it's allowable, but there is a workout facility that is over at the sheriff's office, and I talked to Mr. Use, who talked to Ryan Rutledge. Our employees can use that facility, so I didn't know if maybe we could purchase some equipment for that facility over there that could be utilized not only by the sheriff's office, but other county employees who wanted to work on, their health. I think the healthier our employees are, the better they are long-term. What else did I want to say? The testing facility, we get lots of phone calls from the public and from our employees wanting to know where they can be tested. So if we could provide an actual on-site testing facility that could house more than just 1 or 2 hours a day over the chambers, I think that would be beneficial to the county as well. And that's all I got right now.
Let me ask you on the frontline employees, because we never shut down as a county.
Frontline are essential workers. Well, we continue to pay our employees.
Right.
But those who actually didn't have to work from home or didn't have to be out still working, your sheriff's office they had to go out and they couldn't just sit at home. Your road and bridge people, I don't think just sat at home. They still had to continue to maintain roads and stuff. You had, like was mentioned, some of our employees actually had COVID and was working from home still. Those that I guess the court would deem essential workers. And I think our personnel policy states who an essential worker is, but then it also gives the court the ability to designate certain employees as essential workers. So that would be up to the court's decision on who would receive that pay.
Thank
They
you.
also have a designation in the American Rescue.
They do, yeah. Who would qualify, yeah.
Yeah, I also want to make sure you're aware that, if you are working from home, you do not qualify for that premium pay. So,
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure you're aware. Okay.
I guess I just got a mindset that if they're not an essential worker, why do we even have them on the payroll? So.
Well, every worker is essential to the county,
No,
but.
that's my point. In the business world, I used to get memos to officers, directors, and key employees, and I'm thinking, every employee we hire is a key employee. If not, let's get them off the payroll and move on down the
Typically, your
road.
essential workers are like your law enforcement, your medical, your jailers, dispatchers, those type. Those could not work from home, so
But even our maintenance people, every time we got somebody positive, we're over fumigating the hallways and the offices and the restrooms and all of that, so.
So you have those key employees who had to go above and beyond what the rest of your essential workers had to do. So that's where I would say the
Those were
compensation.
named.
What if you could,
Janitorial.
I know. I just, I think it's hard to look at our employees and say who's not essential, that's all I'm just getting at.
You would have to fall under one of the classifications, and I don't think
I do
your
have
department, my
something
department would.
Not even if I go to the sheriff's office all the time.
Maybe.
Touch everyone's computer.
Commissioner Walker says she has something for you.
Yes.
No, I said I would like to follow Ms. Coleman.
Oh, all right. Well, I was gonna go to Mr. Walker.
Oh, Mr. Walker still got something?
Okay, so you're done with me? Am I done?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
If you're done with us, we're done with you. Good luck on your request. Mr. Walker?
Harry Walker, Road and Bridge Engineer. I guess I missed the memo somewhere because I thought we were coming to be educated on what the grant provided and then go off and develop proposals. So I don't have any proposals developed.
Will you have time to get them as you think about them, or if you have any thoughts on them, so?
Well, I've got some ideas. I got more questions probably than ideas.
Okay.
What I've heard in the presentation today, it sounds like as far as Road and Bridge goes, only the lost revenue money would be applicable. I don't know if we have that number calculated.
We have a number, but we're going through the process of verifying that number.
Okay. But is that basically correct as far as Road and Bridge?
Correct. We do have some allowable costs under, water and sewer. If you have to dig up lines, you replace the road then, and I think there's even stipulations on that. I'm not super familiar on the stipulations on the water sewer and digging up the road for that. I can double check with you on that, but I know that is one of the few stipulations besides revenue loss that Road and Bridge can be used for.
Okay. Well, the obviously finding out how much that is and what's available gives me an idea of what kind of things we could request. You kind of led me into my next question. In some of the discussion today, there was at least the suggestion that we can partner with other entities for the use of some of these grant funds. Would it be permissible for the county department with, say, some of the local water companies on some of their facilities?
So what are you looking to do? I need a little bit more.
Well, is there a way, if we went in and say partnered with Anderson Water Company to help fund an expansion of their well or their facilities that would provide for the community?
Yeah, so you can partner, with different grants. You would follow whichever one is the stricter of the grant. So if it's, ARPA regulations, or if it's, the drinking water fund. Whichever one happens to be stricter in terms of your regulations and stuff is the one you would follow. But you can, you can use this as a cost share match with, the revenue loss funds. If you need 50,000 to match, you can take that 50,000 from revenue loss and you can use it as a match for whatever grant you use it for.
Okay. I have a question on that, Harry. Speaking of Anderson Water, they have a well in Richards, and when electricity goes off, the water goes off for the whole city over there. Would there be a possibility of getting a generator put on that well through this process?
Yes, absolutely. That is one of the allowable costs. You can do that, backup power, any type of backup power, if it's solar or it's generator. Any way you work through it, it's an allowable cost, you can do that.
Okay. That's not an incorporated city, and it's owned by Anderson Water Company. So we would have to.
You would grant that money to them. They would submit a plan of saying, hey, this is how much this generator is going to cost. And they would have to set milestones to get that money funded to them completely. So, you would have, your 25% marker. This is the work that's been done for that 25% milestone. You would get 25% of that total allocation that you're giving to that water company. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Okay.
So even though it's a private company, not a public utility per se, that would be permissible?
Yes, that's fine. It doesn't matter if it's public or private, even if it doesn't, that doesn't matter. It can work.
Okay. I think that would be a good use of some of these funds. A couple of other things that I just thought of while we were talking today. The helipads were mentioned. I happened to have a conversation with Mayor Hale down in Plantersville the other day where she was talking about doing some road improvements because they close FM 1774 and land the helicopter there whenever they have a life flight situation. I think might be worth considering constructing a helipad in Plantersville. If we could do something like that, find the proper location and things. And then the other thing that occurred to me while we were talking, the discussion about, fiber and everything at the fairgrounds. I think particularly if the water and sewer funds are available, an upgrade on the septic system for the fairgrounds would be a high priority. Like, the toilets don't flush, broadband doesn't matter.
Also, Harry, can I mention or ask her possibly about what I mentioned to you earlier? While I was on the site, I don't know if it was NACO's site or the U.S. Treasury site, there had been a recent change about community block development grants. What is CB?
Community block development grant.
Yeah.
They had revamped a portion of the ruling, what is it called, the internal final rule?
The interim final rule, yes.
And it addressed that in road projects. So is it any kind of way you can kind of find out about that maybe?
Yeah, I haven't heard
see it, I
anything.
will send it over,
Okay.
but it was just in the last week.
Okay, yeah, I
Or is
haven't
that
seen
new
anything then. I think I'm probably going to the old interim final rule. So I think the last one was published maybe July. So I think that was my latest version I had been using and I wasn't aware of that, but I can definitely look into that for you.
Yeah, I
Yes.
just saw this last night.
And I guess those are really my only thoughts for right now. Is there a time schedule when we're supposed to have these requests submitted?
It's not up to me on when, you need to submit that. It's really up to the county when y'all want to start moving.
Harry, the way the money's coming in, we have half of it now. We get half of it next May. We need to have what we're going to spend planned by the end of 2024. And we have to have the money spent and the projects completed by the end of December 2026. So at this moment, we've got plenty of time. What we don't have is plenty of money, but what we do need is, if you have additional thoughts in the near term, I'd like to bring them up so we could prioritize what we think we want to do as a court, utilizing these funds as
And that was
best
really
way.
the schedule I was thinking about, that if I come back in 2024 and request more funds, all the money should be gone anyway.
I would think by the time we
Probably
get
24
there.
minutes after Al gets done.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were meaning like, within the next 2 weeks we need something. No,
Yeah.
it's not, we have up until the end of the year, if y'all ready, like to start moving by the end of the year, that's what I was thinking of what you meant. But yes, 2024 for obligations, 2026 to completely spend everything.
Okay, and we're directing everything through the auditor's office?
Yes, sir. So a little bit of a narrative and the best guess you can on the cost associated. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Ms. Walker, Commissioner Walker?
Yes, sir. I wanted to talk about, and I was hoping David Lilly was going to be here, our emergency management person, and where we are in terms of, we talked a lot about testing and vaccinations, and it seems as if when the variant came out, testing shut down. Okay, so there's still that need there. But on top of that, I want to talk about the addressing disparities with the public's outcome. There's a whole realm of things on that. And it was brought to my attention, and I've had this discussion with lots of people about our senior citizens and those type of people needed help navigating some of the things that they were seeing during this pandemic, such as they couldn't go to the doctor, they had to do it on a virtual device that many didn't know how to navigate. With our health resource center being shut down, a lot of them use that service for different things. They're under that disparity list. There's a such thing as a community worker who can help residents access health services. and resources that address the social determinants of their health. Because if they're not seeing anybody or talking to anybody, you know, their health could fall on bad time. Also, assistance to households. We need to address that at some point on how, when we, in the beginning, we were able to get with the Brazos Food Bank and we gave out food and gobs of people came and they wanted to know when was the next round. Well, it was kind of hard getting those rounds to come around. I was able to, in conjunction with my church, to do 600 meal boxes, but that was through the benefit of somebody in Harris County. But those kind of programs kind of fade away, you know, but if there are times that we can donate as a county to, you know, some of these programs that provide food, like the Anderson Food Bank, where people need meat and they need milk when you got kids and stuff like that. So those kind of things, I think we need to look into those type of things. Counseling for evictions. It talks about that counseling and legal aid. There is a program that, there's another bucket of money that came out for ombudsmen. Okay? So that's kind of what I'm talking about. If we could have a community worker that addresses the needs of the public, because they're calling 211, and that doesn't always work, because I've called 211 myself, and the person at 211 may not have known as much as I knew. You know, so if we had someone that can check on these seniors or these disabled people to see what their needs are, find the resources they need. These are some of the people we're talking about we can locate in an office to go out into the community, or the community can come into their office and talk about their needs and what's happening. So I'm just advocating to the court, while we're doing all of these expansions and records and all of that, there is still this public need of people needing assistance and help. And I don't want us, we've got some time to go and we'll present some narratives, but I did want to talk about the assistance of and the disparities that we've seen in our community when it came down to child care work or child care, kids being left at home to do their homework because parents had to work. Talk about some of those things and addressing them getting some assistance.
And yeah, and that's definitely allowable cost on multiple different areas. So yeah, that is not a problem. If that is a direction that, you know, is the final direction that we want to go into. That is not a problem.
I'm asking the court that they consider like our nonprofits and those type of people that we provide, that provide food and assistance to the community. Even our medical assistant, Dr. Ellis up in Beedize, you know, they were overwhelmed with testing and vaccinations and the food banks that we have around the community. I'm sure they've been almost drained, you know, at times. So just wanted to remind the court, we can assist those efforts that they have. We don't have to rebuild, we don't have to build the wheel. We can assist those nonprofits and come up with a system of how we can help people. You know, even if it's a what do I want to say, a card, do y'all allow that? Where I need food, you know, they can say, hey, here's $50. You can go to Brookshire Brothers or some Walmart, buy some food. You know, some type of way to address the needs of the people who are still without work, or whose jobs haven't come back fully. So those disparities are still out there. So I will be bringing some of those in, and that's all I wanted to talk about, Judge.
Thank you.
So, one quick question. On our Justice Center, we had the, oh, you haven't gone yet.
Yeah, I haven't gone.
You go ahead.
You want me to go ahead?
Yes, I do. I apologize.
That's
I thought
okay.
everybody had gone.
Letting everybody else go. Okay, so I did submit a narrative.
Would you identify yourself?
Vanessa Brzezinski, I'm the Grimes County Clerk. I did submit a narrative to the auditor's office for one of my projects, but I have some others that I will be including as well. I don't have it to hand out to you, but they have it, but I'll get it to you. So I have a couple things. The first one I want to address is the Commissioners Court live streaming video services that we just signed up with Granicus to provide that for us. We did sign a 3-year contract with them. And I do think that this is something that could fall under the ARPA Act because we are providing live streaming services to the public so that they don't have to come to the courthouse and expose themselves in a crowded area. 2, if there was ever a quarantine, we could conduct our meetings remotely and still be able to function because the laws that were passed allowed us to now do electronic meetings. We'll be able to do electronic voting, and it will allow my office to record the minutes and Cherie's office to prepare the agendas much more efficiently. So this is something that I really would like us to consider. And I know there was some emails back and forth between me and Greg in the auditor's office about the invoices, and I did have a conversation with Stephen, and I think we've kind of got that straightened out. So the invoice that we received is just for the live video streaming part of it, and that is not part of the 60-day trial, but the agenda and minutes software is the 60-day trial. So that's why we weren't invoiced for that.
Will you respond to the email? with
Yes,
that information?
yes,
Just so we have it in
yes.
the thread.
Mhm. But I think the total for the 3 years, let me look, was $37,656. And then there was the one-time fee of $6,750. That's all our setup costs. And the purchase of the encoder, which is $3,500.
Caitlin, do you foresee that being an eligible expense?
Yes, because it is allowing for you to safely conduct, your work, and it's establishing, your safe distance measures. That should be allowable. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
How much was the encoder?
$3,500.
Thank you.
And that's included in that $6,750
Oh, okay. So
one-time
it's not
setup fee. Yes, and they're looking to get this set up. In the question was, they wanted to know if we wanted to use it here, but I just don't think it's going to work. I think we just need to focus on the new building and not even worry about this. Right. So anyway, so that's the first one, and so the second one kind of ties into that a little bit, and I was kind of maybe surprised that Greg had brought this up because I know we've had a conversation about upgrading our entire county website. I mean, it's functional, but it really could use some improvements in ways that we can communicate with the public. And, get our COVID information out there, which we're not getting anymore. And put our live, it'll have our meetings live streaming on there, as well as our past minutes, past agendas. There's a lot of information on our website, and I think sometimes the public isn't aware that that's available to them. I helped Sheree with it to keep it updated. So between the two of us, we worked pretty hard on doing that.
It looks terrible.
But I know that Greg has,
It looks terrible.
he submitted, I know I think 3 samples out there of other websites.
Yes, he
and
did.
He said, hey, take a review. Now, I know he's looking to upgrade and modernize
Right.
our website, but the idea of whether it could be covered under the ARPA that's another question.
Yeah. I
Public
don't-
communication efforts, it does qualify underneath that, especially
I
if
would
you're-
think for public information.
Yeah, public information about COVID, you know, if there is.
I mean, that'd be a part of it, not the whole package, but a part of it.
If we are stressing, you know, we are stressing that we are gonna do, you know, all the remote tele stuff, you know,
Right.
Yeah.
the courts and the meetings and all
Yeah.
that, and it's gonna be broadcasted to that website,
Yes.
that's not a
Okay.
problem.
And getting information out there about COVID testing and
Sure.
public assistance that's available.
I'm
Food
just
banks.
saying, he's attentive to the website.
Yes,
I don't know
yes.
that he tied that expense to the ARPA money.
No, but I would like to include that. And I know that Granicus offers that service as well. So that's just something to look at. So then, the other one, I want to kind of piggyback off of Lucy about the temporary help, or, you know, getting extra people to come in and help with backlogs. My office has been very busy with, you know, people trying to come in, take care of business. I'm short an employee right now, but, you know, I need scanning. And if I could get someone to just come in and just do scanning, you know, whether it's part-time, temporary, whatever, that would help a lot. You know, so if we do decide to do this pool, or however y'all want to call it, I would be very interested, as well as getting somebody in my office to help with our backload, especially with the court stuff. Yeah, for sure. And then off of that, going back to
Let me stop
scanning.
you.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Caitlin, so bringing temporary employees in, or intern employees in, or part-time employees, however you want to
Right.
capture them, do you think that could be covered under the ARPA if we were dedicating it to scanning of records to make ease of finding those records for the
I
public?
think there is a
to see?
way we can, you know, sell it on, you know, when we go to the reporting, everything about this, you have to sell it to them, so you can always be like, okay, that's not a problem. And when you go to say, this is the projects I want to do, I do believe there is a way we can
Because the
qualify it
ultimate
under
goal is to make
ARPA.
the data available to the public without them having to come into the office.
Right, and that
Yes.
is, you know, a safe distance measure, so, you
Yes.
know, it's a COVID prevention method. So I don't see that being an issue. It is more of how we need to categorize it, which is something we can work on once we get that description in.
Okay.
We can qualify underneath an expense category.
Okay.
So that won't be a
Because,
problem.
you know, my office still has a lot of stuff that needs to be scanned.
Ma'am?
My office still has a lot of stuff that needs to be scanned, especially the court records, like we were discussing, probate cases, criminal cases, civil cases. You can pay companies to come and do that, but it costs money. If I could pay an employee to do it for me, that's gonna save the county, I think, a lot of money. So with that, my next one is scanning projects. I do have records management money to pay for scanning, but it's, you know, not enough, obviously, just like Diane said with her department. So I already have some projects that I'm going to be bringing to Commissioners Court for scanning. And these are the probate records that we talked about. And that's about $200,000 for that project. But again, you know, getting court records scanned is going to take a long time. I have, you know, over almost 30,000 court cases that need to be scanned. And so that's going to take a while. So again, however we can get that done, you know, I would like to try to get that done. But so any scanning projects that we can get paid for through ARPA funding to make these records accessible to the public online, you know, is a plus. One thing I wanted to bring up, which I hadn't heard anybody bring up, it's not really relative to my department, but, you know, we had discussions a while back about putting together a health department to handle COVID, to handle testing, to handle public relations, the permits. So I don't know if that's something the court wants to consider, again, to look at, you know, creating a health department. I don't know. Obviously, that would be a perpetual expense, but, you know, maybe some startup cost, because you would have to have a facility or a office space, and then you would have to have, you know, some kind of plan in place in hiring somebody. So I just thought maybe I'd just throw that out there for consideration again, possibly.
And it would still take, when we talked about original, we talked about doing it in conjunction with the city of Napa.
Yes, we did. You're right, yeah.
And right now, they're in transition with their city manager, so
Right.
it's something that we.
Maybe it's just something we just need to kind of just keep in mind. But I like your idea though about the community service worker, or having a place where the community can come for if not anything, just information, you know, and where to go and how to get it and things of that nature. I think that would be a really good thing. I really do. And then as far as essential workers pay, I don't know, but my office never shut down. I mean, we could not work from home. We worked. We were there every day. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Most of them are like security type
Right.
people, or people
Right.
who dedicate their time.
Oh, yeah, and there
to the
were,
COVID response. That's the big key on that one.
right,
They
right.
had dedicated time, not mixed with their other time.
Yeah, no, with this, we just kept on doing our regular thing every day. Did the best we could. But thank y'all. That's all I've got.
Thank you.
Can I bring up Judge Mormon's, on the new building, I'm sure the new building and the courtrooms are tied to like Zoom meetings, so if he came here and then they had to have a Zoom meeting, or no?
You were asking the wrong person.
I'm asking the wrong person, okay, well, you were IT, so I didn't know if you were.
My involvement with the building is that of a PC technician. I have no input.
Okay.
You got two commissioners that are involved, and I've got a little
I
insight on some of
apologize.
what you're.
Pretty sure there will be data available. and-
Like technology available for them
Oh,
to
yeah.
do the Zoom meetings and stuff, so if
Would
that.
you agree, would just be the hardware, I'm pretty sure the judges probably have a laptop or something, which could be a Zoom.
Would you repeat your initial question?
Just the technology in the new Justice Center and the courtrooms with the ability to do Zoom hearings if that is required or needed. Okay, and so was that in the original plan for the Justice Center, or was that added after the fact of, because due to COVID? And if so, could that be an eligible, I mean, it should be an eligible.
We put in the ports, but we don't necessarily have all the hardware and everything. That was gonna be later. It was gonna be, have the capability of putting it in, but I don't think we have a lot of that in there right now.
Nothing in the new facility was in response to COVID, because whenever we broke ground and started to build it, COVID didn't exist.
Correct.
So,
And we haven't bought a lot of that.
yeah.
It was just
Hardware.
set up for that intent.
Set up for.
Capable.
So
capable of
then
putting
I would
it in.
think the
So
cost of the
hardware
purchase
could
of the,
probably be.
right, should be an eligible
So
expense for that.
if you needed additional hardware or hardware to adjust Zoom, or if you need to buy a license for Zoom, because originally, some of it was, if you did a 40-minute meeting, it was free, but if you did extended past that time, it was more. So, but having to get a Zoom license or a team license or any of those authorities for the software to allow you, that's all as a result of COVID.
Right, so
So-
we want to look at adding that to the list. It's on your, it's number 14 on your list currently, just because that was a conversation I had with him on Monday, I believe.
Okay.
And I don't believe this is going to still be a flow-through courtroom in this building, correct? This is not.
This one?
Mhm.
Eventually eliminated, this one.
Okay. So if there's any other places that are gonna just be like an overflow for a courtroom, if these are booked up for some odd reason, which they shouldn't be.
The only overflow should be
The
the
courthouse.
second floor courthouse, yes.
And that does currently have the capability of the Zoom.
Yeah, because they do it now. But again, if licenses are required, or
I'm just talking about the
additional.
hardware for over there too. as well.
Well, yes and no. They've got the hardware now, but when like Judge McLean goes to the new Justice Center, that hardware's going with him. So it could be required additional hardware to make that
I
happen.
can't speak on that. As far as the Zoom use goes, it's your laptop, it's the clerk's laptop, whoever has to join that meeting, And I believe the way Tuck has been doing it is the defense attorney, it's on them to get their client accessibility.
I mean, basically, you just need an internet connection.
Yeah, I don't think it falls on the court, to my knowledge,
Okay,
to provide it.
yeah, I don't know of any of, okay, I just wanted to bring that up.
Good question.
I think there were some things that were added to the new building that were added because of COVID. Didn't we put some pay windows and some?
Yes. So
COVID.
I do want Al to be able to, if that's okay, to go through that because we did come back and add those later on. Or the
Absolutely.
JP, or
Absolutely.
he's not there, but the other district clerks and stuff. Yes.
And all of that was after the original contract was signed and the
Yes.
building was designed. So those are additional costs associated with COVID.
Yes.
That ought to be able to go on your tally sheet. So when we get that back, we have a little more freedom in spending that. Are there any other department heads or elected officials that have anything that they want to add that hasn't already been talked out today or submitted to the auditors with the narrative? Caitlin, do you have some final comments that you?
I just want to have a question.
Okay.
Okay, we talked about renovating buildings. And we talked about whether or not we could add on over there.
Right.
But if we can retrofit this building that's already existing, those kind of costs could be covered, right?
Correct, yes.
I just want to make sure.
No, this was a really good discussion. We got a lot of ideas out on the board, and I'm excited to see where we move forward with this.
Now, how many counties are you working for on this?
Currently, I have 16. We are trying to hire more, just because 16 is not the ideal workload for project
I was
managers.
thinking one or two.
Yeah, not currently. We are trying to hire more, and it's not just y'all that are having issues hiring people. It is also GrantWorks, but I currently am able to manage the 16 that I'm working with right now, but they don't like the idea of me working with 16.
For the record, would you just say Grimes is number one?
I can't do that. But I do like coming to Grimes. Yes, I do like coming to Grimes. I'm actually coming this weekend to go to that Renaissance Festival. I'm excited for that, so. I haven't been to the Texas Renaissance Festival for years now. I'm originally from Louisiana, so it was a little bit harder for me to get to, but
I'd like a couple of tickets for opening weekend.
I actually planned on going this weekend, because it's my.
I have a question while they're talking about the Renaissance. We talked about emergency ambulance services.
Yes.
Okay, if we're vacating buildings here, we are currently a 65-mile long county.
Right.
It would be ideal if we had an ambulance bay here in Anderson.
Okay.
Not just only a helipad, but where we could have a actual, right now, the fire department has donated a room, but that's only for emergency supervisors.
Right.
But if we had the opportunity to have another ambulance bay, that would greatly cut down on the transport times of these other ambulances that have to run.
Right.
And so our partners is the local CHI St. Joseph.
Okay.
But if we're going to vacate a building and we have something we can renovate as a EMS station,
Yeah, that should be allowable as well, especially because if you're seeing an increased need due to COVID, yeah, that's allowable, absolutely. A lot of this, most of it's gonna be, yes, you just have to tie it to COVID somehow, so yes, that is definitely allowable.
even in the southern part of the county where it's growing so fast, where Renfest is.
Right.
We don't have a building there, but here we have buildings.
Right.
And if something could be renovated, with one of the buildings we're
Right.
moving out of, I just wanted to throw that out, because we got Road and Bridge over there.
I think we pretty much hit our 5 million mark after all these. I think we've exceeded, honestly, but.
Pretty sure we would.
But that's where we go to work now, start prioritizing what's going to be the most benefit to the most citizens as we work through all of this.
Because we didn't even touch on the fairgrounds, but we were.
But you got it on the sheet.
Yeah, it was on the PowerPoint, so I did at least mention it briefly, yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Awesome, thank y'all.
Commissioners, anything else? Then I will take us to, okay, I will take us into agenda item number 3, which is to adjourn. Can I get y'all to hold it down for a minute? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn. Second.
There's a motion before the court submitted by Commissioner Philip Cox, seconded by Commissioner David Dobianski. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We adjourn. The time